So for anyone that's watching right now, thank you for watching. This is Brad, my new CFI, and we're going to do a pre-brief of our flight tomorrow. So if anybody says hi in the chat, I'm going to be focusing on this and not the chat. So I will say hi to you later.
Sure. So, Bill, obviously you and I know each other on a very informal basis. We're friends, obviously, and this is our first interaction as a true student instructor, even though the instructor side of me never really turns off. One thing I like to start with all my students is kind of an idea of my background. And I hope to not get too preachy or braggy as I do it, but it kind of gives you an idea of what my perspective is and where I'm coming from with these and what my experiences are. Are you okay with that?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so some ground rules as we start this whole process. I won't have the answer to all of your questions. Most of the questions you ask me, I will have heard at this point because I've flown with a lot of students and done a lot of teaching, all that sort of stuff. But inevitably, there will be some questions that I don't know the answer to. That should not discourage you from asking them. Okay, I am well prepared to go to any length that you can imagine to find the answer to the questions that you may have, even if I don't have it. So,
well, I'm sure you probably, on some level, enjoy having a question that you don't know the answer to.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it gives me an excuse to call somebody who I know will have the answer to, and a 5-minute question will turn into a 2-hour discussion, and then we're down the rabbit hole, and I love it. So,
okay,
everybody learns something if there's a question that I don't have the answer to.
Yeah.
So please, throughout the entire process, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Don't be afraid if you think, oh, well, it's out of the scope or anything like that. If it's out of the scope of what we're doing, I'll tell you. I may still answer it, but I will tell you.
Okay. Yeah, and I've I could think of a few times where I've asked that to Tony in the past, and it's kind of because of some introduction to things that are above where I'm at with the simulator. I've kind of can peek behind the curtain on some things that really I mean, you know how that is. Like you can be out of your depth really quick in a simulator and kind of prompt some questions that are not relevant.
It's funny. Some of the best simulator IFR pilots that I've ever seen, like on an actual stream or YouTube video or what have you, have zero real flight experience. Yeah. So they're very, very good at filling and fitting that mold. But some of those things get lost in the nuance of real airplanes, Right. So it's very easy to get kind of over your head, but that shouldn't discourage you if you're worried about that happening.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, I'm going to try to go into these lessons with a clear expectation from you, right? These are going to be the standards that we're looking to do. These are the things that we're expected to do. There will be surprises occasionally, but they're going to be few and far between. And anytime I surprise you with something, there's going to be a reason that I'm surprising you with it, as opposed to letting you know it's coming ahead of time. Okay? A lot of these situations that I'm going to put you in are things that have either happened to me or happened to friends of mine that I think are valuable, right?
Okay. So, I mean, are you on, and this is something that I was talking to Julie about this last night. Because Tony didn't know like where I was at to the extent that you do, I felt like I was kind of trying to impress him in a way. Like where if he would ask me a question or something, like I would try to not really make up an answer, but I would try to think about it a little bit too deeper, even if I kind of knew like I really don't know the answer to that, but let me try to figure it out in kind of like a to help display that I knew more than I probably the average person does at this point.
Sure.
So on these surprises, is the goal, and I'm assuming it's going to be something like, okay, hey, your lights are out now, or your radios are out, or something, and maybe not all the time necessarily a failure, but something like, hey, surprise, this happened. Do you want me to be prepared ahead of time for as many surprises as possible, or is the point to surprise me in that, hey, like you're not prepared for this right now, but this is how quickly it can come up, and now as a result of that, we're going to learn this technique, or we're going to learn.
Well, kind of a mix of those two ideas. I'm never going to give you a situation which is unsolvable. And I'm never going to give you a situation which I don't think you are capable of either rectifying or at least addressing. Okay?
Okay.
When I say surprises, I mean things that aren't, so off the wall that you couldn't even, it wouldn't even happen in reality. These are things that can catch you off guard, or common pitfalls, or, systems issues like you mentioned. It may not be a full engine failure. Maybe it's a partial engine failure.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have a rough running engine, or maybe you have a fuel tank contamination and your usable fuel just decreased by half. Things like that. So those are the kind of situations that I'm talking about. Not so much like, oh no, your wing just fell off. Not stuff like that.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that does. Yeah, that's kind of what, like, along the lines of what I was thinking of.
Sure.
So, I mean, I'll obviously, as we go through the POH of this plane, which isn't going to be too dissimilar from what I have been using. I think there's a lot more gravity-fed things on the Cessna than the Piper.
Yeah, that's the thing about a high wing.
Yeah. The flaps, I'm very conscious of the flaps breaking or becoming asynchronous at any point because they're electric.
It's actually not as big of a deal as you would think. There's a carry-through tube that we'll talk about, which would actually, in theory, prevent that from ever happening. Okay, cool. But we'll talk about that in the future. So just hypothetically, just so I can kind of be prepared, when you throw a surprise at me, if I don't know the answer, how would you want me to proceed? Do you want me to just say, like, right away, like, I don't know what to do in this case, but I think I would, or do you want me to just? Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. Right. Always give it an attempt. Because the goal here, as weird as this sounds as a flight instructor, the goal here is for me to spend as little time with you in the airplane as possible, right? I should basically just be riding along after the first 10 hours or so with you. Yeah. And my goal is to prepare you so that you don't need me. Yeah. So I'm going to be constantly evaluating your PIC mentality and your decision making and things like that. You can teach anybody to fly an airplane, but having the PIC mentality and the decision making process develop is the most important thing I think you can do with primary flight instruction. Okay. So. All right, that makes sense. Again, our comfort level together, like on an informal basis, is a lot higher than I was with the previous instructor. So, sure. I will try to be, maybe like a good mixture of completely honest, like, dude, I don't know what the hell to do in this situation, and like, okay, I can, like, I should know this. I can figure this out, and we'll just kind of go from there. All right. You know me. I'm all about one-liners and things that you can remember just off the top of your head, and little funny sayings and things like that, right? So, the two big sayings that I have about emergency procedures and abnormalities in general. If you do the wrong thing in an emergency, there's about a 99% chance that it will make the problem worse, right? If you do nothing in an emergency, there is 100% chance that it will make the problem worse. So always do something, right? Even if you only have a 1% shot at making it better. Yeah. Okay. So always do something. So that's saying number one. Yeah. Saying number 2 comes from a guy by the name of Chris Hadfield, who is one of my all-time favorite role models. He's a Canadian astronaut. I don't know if you know who he is or not, but Canadian astronaut, had an awesome YouTube channel for a while.
What's his last name? Hatfield?
Hadfield. Hadfield. Super cool dude. But he was giving a TED Talk one time, and he said, there is no problem so bad you can't possibly make it worse.
There's no problem possibly so bad that you can't
There's no
make
problem
it worse.
so bad
Got it.
that you can't possibly make it worse.
It can always get worse.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it.
So that's kind of an addendum to the do something, right?
Yeah.
So the moral of the story here is do something, but think about what you do before you do it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's more about critical thinking and decision making as opposed to, hey, I need to do something right now.
Right.
There are very, very few things in an airplane that need to be done immediately. Right?
Yeah, that you can't just kind of like take a second and go, all right, what's the deal here? What do I got to do? Yeah.
Exactly. Think it through,
Okay.
When I'll give you an example. You have an engine failure, right?
Yeah.
If you're at 3,000
full engine
feet,
failure, right?
Yeah, full engine failure. Just gives up the ghost. You got oil on the windscreen. The thing is clearly dead. It's not going anywhere. You're at 3,000 feet. What's your first reaction? You look out the window and go, huh, that wasn't there a minute ago. Right?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like, oh shit, panic. It should be, huh, all right, well, we're still flying.
Yeah.
We're still flying. Clearly the engine's not going on. This is where I'm at. This is as much altitude that I have to deal with. Okay, where am I going?
Yeah.
And if you have an engine failure at 3,000 feet AGL, you got like 5 to 6 minutes before you're going to be on the ground.
Right.
That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So there are very few things that need to be done immediately in an airplane. Generally, the things that need to be done immediately in an airplane happen at high speeds or low altitudes. And if you don't meet either of those conditions, generally you have a lot of time to react, right?
Yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the emergency procedures, but don't need to hit on that so much immediately.
Okay.
So just kind of an idea of what my mentality is with that.
Yeah. I mean, given what you do know of my skill level and knowledge base, what is the typical, how much time do you spend on emergency procedures versus all the other stuff, and how does that compare to what you think we'll be doing?
I think emergency procedures are something that isn't really hit on enough in flight training, especially primary flight training.
Yeah.
So you can expect something abnormal to happen every single flight.
Okay.
Whether it's one thing or two things or the entire emergency procedure section, something abnormal is going to happen every single flight.
Cool. Okay.
And if it doesn't, that means I forgot. Right?
Yeah. All right. That's good. I mean, and it doesn't. I mean, it could be something as little as pop a fuse back in, right, or as big as we need to land right now.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
It could exactly. It could be as the attitude indicator just died, or it could be hey, you're losing oil pressure. What do? Yeah. So. Cool. So I've got a little briefing sheet here that we'll talk about. I wanted to start with I'm going to break the briefing down into 3 different phases. Okay. So the first phase is going to be talking about the airplane and the POH and some of the profiles we're going to fly and things like that. Second phase, we're going to be talking about the practice area, what we're going to do up there, some of the maneuvers and some of the things to look out for. Some of the procedures that I like to follow up there as well. And then the third phase is going to be our landings phase and return to John. Do you have any issues with that order or anything like that?
No, sounds good to me.
Okay, give me just 1 second. I'm having a bit of a nose thing. I'm going to step away for a couple minutes and I'll get back to you.
All right, sounds good.
So I'll be back.
Okay. All right, Caterly 1, thank you so much for 5 months in a row. I'm close to my solo now. Great to hear you and your CFI. Awesome, Caterly. Well, definitely let us know in the Discord how that goes. Can't wait to hear that. Speaking of solo, Julia just gave this to me as a late birthday present. This is a framed picture of my shirt with a picture from my solo on the bottom there. Really, really great, nice frame, professionally matted there. Pretty big size. It's freaking awesome. Drew, the Cessna pilot, what does your CFI think of Pilot Edge? Well, we fly on Pilot Edge together quite a bit, actually, and he loves it. We have a fantastic time on Pilot Edge. We're lucky to have our home airport basically be one of the main hubs in Pilot Edge, which is John Wayne, and let me rephrase that. All of the airports that we will be flying to, have flown to, are all utilized on Pilot Edge. So as a training tool for us, for me in particular, flying out of this airport, it's absolutely fantastic. But I mean, it helped me solo in under 6 hours, and my cross country solo was in about 12 hours. So it's crazy. Chris, how's it going? Maverick, heard your voice earlier on Ty's stream. If we finish this briefing before you guys close, which I imagine we will, hopefully we'll hear your voice as well. Sweet, yeah, Caterly, you're in the double digits now, dude. That's awesome. There was somebody that followed as well. Let me say hi to who that was. Colonel Kunzix. I butchered that. I apologize, but hello, Colonel. The Colonel is here. You're working Western Expansion. Got it. Okay. Well, we miss you down in ZLA, Chris. Yeah. So once Brad does come back, and we continue this.
Hello.
Oh, nice. So I will. I'm going to be focusing on this, so you'll have to chat amongst yourselves, and then I will, if we have a break, or if something, if we have a little break or we finish, I will say hi to you guys. So, but thank you everyone for hanging out tonight.
Yep. Take as many breaks as you need. As I mentioned, I'm a little bit under the weather still, but I should be good to go for tomorrow. So any breaks you take give me an opportunity to breathe.
Okay, cool.
Rest.
Yeah,
so
and you can
as many as you need.
If you take as many as you want as well. If you just say, hey,
Sure.
Just give me a minute, and I can catch up with the chat too. So it's definitely no problem. Sure.
Mutually beneficial.
Yep.
So cool. All right. If you have no objections to kind of how I want to break this briefing up, and if there's anything you want to add along the line or any questions you have, go ahead and ask them.
Yeah. Okay. So we're POH. What the air work we're gonna do, and then landings and return back to John Wayne.
Exactly.
So is is the plan to still just go out to French Valley?
Yeah, if that's okay with you.
Okay. Yeah. No, it's perfect.
Cool. Yeah, we'll do that then. I think French Valley is a good place to start with for today. It's a little bit slower pace, nice long runway, pretty straightforward pattern. So,
okay.
If French Valley's super busy, we can go over to Hemet or something like that. Whatever works. We'll play it by ear.
Hemet's not too far.
Hemet's easy.
Paris is probably going to be pretty busy usually.
Yeah, I try to stay away from Paris just because they do so much abnormal operating there.
All the skydiving and stuff.
Jumpers and things like that. So I try to stay away from Paris.
Okay.
But Hemet, obviously, I'm very familiar with, having flown the jet in there for a year and a half. So.
Oh really? Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the owners live. So.
Oh okay.
Cool. All right. So you have your POH handy?
I do.
Excellent. And do you have a notepad handy or something to write with?
I do indeed.
Awesome. So I'm putting you to work, Mr. Student.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about some basic things here in the POH, what the different sections are, kind of what Cessna's philosophy is to the POH, how it differs from Piper a little bit.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about some limitations, some speeds to know, some basic things about the airplane, what it likes, what it doesn't like, things to look at on your pre-flight, things to look at in the cockpit. We'll talk about the emergency procedures a little bit, some different terminology that they use, some different formatting they use that to emphasize various different things.
Okay.
We'll talk about performance calculations, how it relates to being legal, how it relates to us operating the airplane on a daily basis, kind of in the regs and out of the regs, and how we use them in practice.
Okay.
We'll talk about some normal procedures, the difference in flows versus checklist, some power settings to keep in mind, some profiles, things like that.
Okay.
And then we'll very briefly touch on systems, just so you can kind of see how much is similar to the Warrior or the Archer, as opposed to how much is different.
Yeah. Okay.
So at the start of it, though, we'll take a look at the POH as a whole here. I sent you a 172S NAV2 POH.
Okay.
Fairly similar to what we're going to be flying. We are flying a NAV2 model Skyhawk, but with a couple of optional pieces of equipment in it that most of them don't have.
And what is the NAV2 refer to?
So NAV2 is a Cessna terminology for a Bendix King radio stack and the last variant before the G1000. So the G1000 is referred to as the NAV3 from Cessna, whereas the NAV2 is the standard King and Bendix radios and MFD and things like that.
Okay.
So don't worry about remembering that. It's just some secondary terminology that you may see Cessna reference at some points.
Cool.
So cool. So the POH is broken down into 9 basic sections. The ones we really care about are sections 1 through 7. Section 5 and 6 are mostly reference. The other ones are all going to be stuff that you use on a fairly regular basis, whether you know it or not, right? Sections 8 and 9 are kind of beyond our scope. Section 8 specifically is handling service and maintenance. Not really going to touch on that too much.
Okay.
The owner of the airplane is also the primary A&P for the airplane. He's the guy who can literally build the thing off the top of his head. So
yeah, dude, I saw that he was a mechanic, and when you were telling me about him, and he was working on a plane, and I think they were older planes, right? So I didn't know what the rules were with that. It sounded, the way you presented it, I was picturing like a guy in a garage wrenching on an old Alpha, forgetting the fact that you can't do that with airplanes necessarily.
Right. Yeah. So funny, interesting thing about aircraft maintenance, and my mechanic on the Bonanza is the guy who told me this. Aircraft mechanics are technically, in the eyes of the FAA, unskilled labor. So what that means is that they're technically not allowed to even work on an airplane without access to the service manual. So they have to have access to a service manual before they can work on the plane, technically. Now, the owner of the airplane happens to be one of the most intelligent and thorough mechanics I've ever met.
Yeah.
And he has the entire service manual for the airplanes that we fly pretty much memorized.
Cool.
And he's been working on them, for the better part of 20 years now. So
yeah,
he knows these airplanes well. This airplane that's his, he bought from the factory new, and he has done every piece of maintenance on it since it left Wichita.
Wow.
So
really, every single thing he's done.
Everything.
Damn, that's crazy.
It's all him.
That's really cool.
So, yeah, he knows this airplane well. To make the understatement of the night.
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
So,
okay, so we have general limitations, emergency procedures, normal procedures, performance, weight and balance, and airplane and systems. Those are the main.
For the most part.
Okay.
Yep. Supplements, you'll find the additional documentation for the avionics and for any STCs that it has, and any additional equipment that's not covered in Section 7. Basically, will go in the supplement section. So
Okay.
We'll reach into that as we need to, if we need to look something up, but I'm not going to worry about it too much right now.
Okay.
So cool. We'll start with general. And we'll kind of just go through it piece by piece in very small portions tonight.
Okay. Like, do you want to just go through like the actual table of contents, or do you want to go like through the pages?
We'll just kind of scroll through the pages, and I'll point some things out
Okay.
that may be different than what you're used to. And
Okay,
things like
perfect.
that.
Yeah, that's cool.
You'll find that Cessna in the general section includes a lot of shit that you don't really care about.
Yeah.
They'll include temperature conversions and volume conversions and hectopascal to inches of mercury conversions, and it's stuff that is useless to you in a daily basis, but it's there in case you need to reference it, things like that.
Dude, this is freaking awesome, by the way, dude. I love this.
Yeah. Anytime, man.
So cool. I will try to not break the fourth wall of the, like Bill and Brad friends and Bill and Brad student teacher. But yeah, it would just like occurred to me, like I just flipped the page and saw the little diagram on, like section 1, page 1. I'm like, dude, Brad is freaking like a genius with this stuff, and it is so cool that I get to like, and it's just awesome. Sorry.
Yeah, I have entirely too much time in 172s. I had to send the numbers to the owner the other day. I have 734 hours in 172s.
Lord.
So I mean, it's entirely too much.
That's awesome.
I've spent far too much time of my life in a washing machine with wings. But lots of fun. They're interesting airplanes, and you'll find that they're a lot more capable than people make them out to be.
Cool.
So anyway, you've got this 3-angle view of it here with the top-down front-facing and the side-facing view. Don't worry about the dimensions too much. This isn't a type-rating course, so I'm not going to quiz you on those. Okay. But just know it's I think it's a slightly longer wing than the Archer, but the cabin is slightly narrower, so you have a little bit more wing surface area than you did the Archer. However, you won't really notice it so much just because you have a higher wing now, so ground effect isn't going to be quite as pronounced, and you'll find that it actually feels like it has a little bit less surface area compared to the Archer.
It's funny that ground effect thing. When I was having a drink with Tony and a couple of the CFIs there, when we were talking about the potential of moving to 172, and they all three of them agreed that a 172 has more ground effect. And we're at like a restaurant having, some beers and $2 tacos. And I was like, this is 3 against 1. I'm going to lose this one every time. But I was like, when does a Cessna have a more ground effect than a low wing Piper? Like you're cushioning on the air. Like they're.
Yeah. So here's the reason why is because if you fly an Archer and a 172 at the same speeds, your 172 is actually going to be making more lift. And it's
not ground effect, it's just lift.
It's just total lift.
Okay.
Yeah. The 172 also tends to retain energy a little bit better, so that probably is part of it. You pull the power on the Archer, and to some extent, it's going to fall like a rock. Not so bad as the Arrow, but the Archer for sure will come out of the sky more than the 172. So,
all right. So what they said is true. Like a 172 will float more, but it's not necessarily because of ground effect.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And as weird as this is going to sound, a 172 floats more because people fly 172s way too fast. They cross the numbers at 70 knots or 65 knots or something like that, and they're going to float to frickin' Atlantic. Versus you cross the numbers at 55, and it's going to land exactly like your Archer. So it's just something to consider. And I'll show you both of those different things and through the process of our flight tomorrow. So,
okay. Yeah.
And actually, I won't show you. You'll show yourself whether you know it or not. So... anyway, so there's the 3 view of the 172. Then we get down into the next page. You have the descriptive data. It is a Lycoming engine, IO360 L2A, 180 horsepower, same engine that you have on the Archer.
Yeah.
I think it is actually even the same sub designation. I think it's also an L2A that you have on the Archer.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the only difference, I mean, obviously this was fuel injected versus the Archer was carbureted.
right.
Where is well, I guess because it is fuel injected, we don't have that that carburetor placement issue, not issue, but
Right.
just difference where a Cessna is going to need more carb heat than a Piper.
Right, but because it's fuel injected, you don't have carb heat at all.
Right. But is there any with a fuel injected Cessna? Is there any difference in? Is there any effect of where that intake resides, or does it not matter at all?
Not like you're thinking.
Okay.
So there are some interesting little nuances to fuel injected engines that carbureted engines don't necessarily experience to such a degree. One of them being vapor lock.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, fuel injected engines have larger issues with vapor lock. Not always, but typically. Usually, it's on hot days at high altitudes when fuel pressure is low. Is where you'll see vapor lock. So basically, trying to start the engine on a summer day in Big Bear is going to be damn near impossible.
Okay.
But for the most part, once you've learned to recognize the situations where it can happen, it's not going to be that big of a deal.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's mostly an issue that you're going to see on starting or at high altitudes on hot days.
Okay.
With a hot engine. But the prop is a little bit different on this plane compared to the Archer. I seem to recall the Archer prop being a little bit longer, but the 170, you're not going to notice it. It's just one of those kind of, interesting sort of things.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
Got a whole bunch of gas in this airplane. You got 53 usable gallons.
Okay, so that's 5 more than the Piper.
Yep, 5 more than the Piper. However, the airplane is left at the tabs, which is 35 gallons. The reason for that is usable weight. You try to keep the usable weight as high as possible because I'm not a small guy. So
yeah,
we typically leave the airplane with reduced fuel. 35 gallons is 3.5 to 4 hours of fuel. So you've got plenty to play with there. And if you really want to top it off, you can top it off. So
and it's 30. You said 35 gallons.
Yeah, 35 is typical for what we'll start with. That's not a Cessna procedure. That's just this is how this airplane works.
Okay,
That's
but the tabs are roughly 35 gallons.
Approximately. Okay. Yeah. So cool. And I'll point those tabs out to you when we're looking into the fuel tank.
All right.
So yeah, 56 total, 53 usable. Same oil that you use in the Archer, so no differences there. It's an 8-quart sump, 9-quart total for the system. This airplane, we want to add oil to it when it reaches 6 quarts or lower.
Okay.
It typically likes to sit about 6 to 6.5 quarts. It stays happy there. And you'll be adding oil probably every 10 hours or so.
Okay.
Then we get to weights. This is both a normal and a utility category airplane. Do you know the difference between the two?
Not really. I mean, I know that there are differences, but I don't I know. I'll tell you what I think I know.
Okay, sure.
Utility is technically over. I mean, it's more weight than the normal category, and in order to fly in the utility category, you have to have some kind of pre-authorization or certification to do that.
Well, I think you might be confusing that with something a little bit different.
Okay.
So for most Part 23 certified airplanes, this being a Part 23 certified plane, the normal category is going to be a higher weight than the utility category if it has both.
Okay.
You can see that on this POH here. Normal category is 2558 versus utility category at 2208 for ramp weights, right? The difference in our case is actually G limitations. We'll find that when we get to Section 2. And for the exact numbers, I don't want to misquote them to you right now. But your major difference here is going to be that the normal category is going to have a slightly lower G limit than the utility category.
Okay.
The other major difference in 172 specifically is that they actually are spin approved in the utility category only. So you have to be below that 2,200 pound limit in order to do spins.
Got it. I didn't. Okay.
So
I didn't know if it was certified for that. My dad has told me many times that he has done that numerous times, but didn't know
I have
if
done
it was
many spins in 172s. It's really, really boring. It's really kind of docile. So
Are you spin certified?
So there isn't actually a spin or aerobatic certification in the U.S.
Okay.
It's kind of one of those things that the FAA will let you do as long as you don't kill anyone.
Okay.
And
So
that said, there is an endorsement that has to be done prior to getting your CFI. So I have demonstrated spins to an instructor, and I've also obviously done them quite a bit with students.
So we could hypothetically do that?
In theory, but with us, it's going to be an issue of actually getting into the utility category because I'm not exactly a small person.
Yeah, me neither. So
that will be the major issue more than anything else.
Gotcha. Okay.
So cool. Then we come down to abbreviations, symbols, terminology, anecdotes, funny stories, things like that. We have all these different V speeds and things like that. So if you ever are reading through the POH and you're like, what does that mean? It'll probably be in this list somewhere.
Okay, cool.
So we'll kind of just keep scrolling here, keep scrolling, get all the way down to pretty much go to section 2 now.
Okay,
which is verifying here that I'm not missing kilograms. Then we get into the 17 pages of conversions. Not even kidding.
Yeah. Jesus, there's a lot of them.
Yeah, you can just go straight to section 2 now.
Section 2, okay.
Yep, limitations.
Section 2, limitations, all right.
Indeed. So this is where we start getting into the bread and butter of the actual POH, things that we really, really want to know.
Yeah.
The first thing you'll come across is this introduction section, kind of tells you how it's meant to be done and how certain limitations in Section 9 have been approved into these limitations here in Section 2. So this isn't necessarily exact to every airplane that you'll, like every 172S that you'll find. In our case, it's close enough. So this will be a good enough reference.
All right.
So with the airspeed limitations here, you'll see it's actually in 2 different tables. There's one for limitations and then airspeed indicator markings. The limitations one are the legal, thou shalt not break these. The airspeed indicator markings are reference for you, right? You're expected to know both of those tables, and how to use them.
Let's see. What am I looking at here? Okay. Oh, all right. Because I was just looking at the airspeed limitation, so we're past that one, right?
Yep. So we're looking at that table and then the table on the next page as well.
Okay. All right. Got it. Yeah. The white arc, green arc, yellow arc, red line.
Yep. Exactly. So some of these different on the airspeed indicator are actually different. What do you call it? Different V speeds, right? So you're familiar with VSO versus VS, right? Or VS1. I'm not sure what terminology Tony used with you. But the VSO you won't find listed anywhere in this POH. You kind of have to infer that, okay, it's at the bottom of the white arc. And if you look at the airspeed indicator markings under the significance section, that far right column, it actually tells you that VSO is at the bottom of the white arc.
Yeah. Okay. So full flap operating range. Lower limit is maximum weight VSO in landing configuration. Upper limit is maximum speed permissible with flaps extended. And that's full flaps, right?
Yes, it's full flaps, but in reality, it's anything beyond 10 degrees. So you can have 10 degrees of flaps open up to 110 knots, or 10 degrees of flaps deployed up to 110 knots. Anything more than 10 degrees, you need to be in the white arc.
Okay, where does it show that?
That's on the previous page.
Okay.
Under the airspeed limitations there, you'll see
VFE. There we go. Okay, yeah, VFE. Okay, so 10 degrees of flaps, 110, 10 to 30 is 85. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
So
and focus on the indicated airspeed, the IAS numbers as opposed to the CAS numbers. Our airspeed indicator shows indicated airspeed.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying. I think the Piper's white arc was actually pretty high up.
Yeah.
It was a lot higher than 85 because I think it was. I think their white arc is. I can't remember
Yeah.
how
Well,
they differentiated that, but okay, that makes sense.
yeah. So as far as flaps go in the 172, you'll find that it slows down very, very easily.
Okay.
You will have no trouble getting into the 85 range if you need to. I promise you, you can slow this thing down like you would not believe.
Yeah.
You know,
We're probably gonna have the opposite problem of that.
Yes, you're going to be on base or final and be like, why the hell am I so slow?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's you're gonna have no issues with that.
Okay.
So, cool. Questions on either of those two
maneuver,
tables?
yeah, then the maneuvering speed. I mean, this is kind of, this may be for further down, but the maneuvering speed, that's that full deflection that you were talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. Full deflection of one control surface in one direction immediately.
Yeah, that seems crazy, dude.
Yeah,
and
it's a very specific speed.
And it's also interesting that the higher the weight goes, the higher the airspeed goes.
Yes, and we can talk about that, but it has to do with resting angle of attack, and that's kind of going down into the weeds tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. I mean, if you're 1,900 pounds and you're going 105 knots and you yank fully back on that stick, it's going to send that thing flipping around like, one of those painting stir sticks.
Yeah, you're going to do damage to the airplane.
Yeah,
if you do that. So I mean, it's
too responsive at that weight, basically,
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, and it has to do with angle of attack available and control force that a full deflection would apply. So we'll talk about that at another time. But,
okay. Yeah. I just kind of noticed that.
Yeah.
It's interesting. When you told me that about the Bonanza. And I think it was even when we were going into Catalina about that, when we were,
right.
Yeah, just like we're within maneuvering speed, which is full deflection. I was like, good Lord, I could not imagine yanking a control surface like that going that speed.
Right.
I mean, is that anything that you'd even remotely, like, not really test is the wrong word, but test, I guess, for lack of a better term?
Test it, no, but knowing it is important. And the reason why is actually not because of pilot input. It has to do with what's the way to phrase this? Environmental factors causing a full deflection of the controls. Let's say you're flying through severe turbulence or something like that.
Yeah.
And you have an upset to the left and you give it full right aileron to try to bring it back. That will cause a full deflection of the controls, right? So you want to be below that maneuvering speed.
Okay, that makes sense.
So that's
practical
the way
application.
Yep.
Okay.
So cool. Any other questions about either of those two tables?
No, I like them.
Okay. So hidden under that second table, you'll see you have power plant limitations. And that continues on to the page after that with the instrument markings, what the different green arcs and red arcs are.
Mm-hmm.
Again, not a type rating course. I'm not going to be testing you on what the different limitations are. All you need to know is the needle in the green or is it not?
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome that you can that you are so in tune to it that you can actually differentiate the two. Like you don't need to know this because it's not a type rated class. That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that is something especially the 500 series type rating, when I was doing the 500 type, they wanted me to know all the different numbers, like the maximum oil pressure and the minimum oil pressure. And then I got to the check ride and the guy's like, don't worry about it. I don't care. Just see the green arc. I don't care. So,
yeah,
and that's what it comes down to is, I'm not going to look over at it and be like, oh no, we're at 84.5 PSI. I'll be like, no, it's almost at the top of the green arc.
Yeah, our brains can only hold so much information.
Exactly, and I don't have enough extra brain cells to devote to that.
Yeah.
So, cool. So that is through page 2-6 with the power plant instrument markings.
Yeah. Okay.
And then page 7 here in section 2, you have the different weight limits, utility category, and things like that, center of gravity limits.
Why is the, I mean, this may be completely irrelevant, but why do they call it utility category and normal category when I would think that maybe you'd even flip those, if anything?
Yeah, I don't know. I assume it's from back in the day when they were first discussing these terminology and things like that, but I don't actually know the answer to that.
Right, like it seems weird. Like if you were in the utility category, it would be, you'd have more utility and be heavier, or
Right, yeah, and it could just be because you can get more utility out of the airplane, as in you can fly it in a wider envelope. But I don't know.
Okay.
That's a great question for somebody who I don't even know who to ask.
We need to hit up the Smithsonian or something and
call Oak City. Find out. Yeah.
This could be our dissertation.
Yeah, right. So anyway, so that's page 2-7 here. You can see the different limits. Notice the ramp weight on both is 8 pounds heavier than the takeoff and landing weight. The takeoff and landing weights are the same.
Yep.
Why do you think, or you probably already know, why it's 8 pounds heavier?
Yeah, those are all the same Piper numbers to the number. Yep. That takes into account the fuel used on the ramp for startup, taxi, and run up.
Exactly. So when you look at the Piper charts, I think it gives you fuel used on the ground in pounds, right? I think it actually gives you 8 pounds.
Yeah.
Or does it give you the 1.3 gallons?
Well, I was just going to say, looking at that, I can just, if it's 6 gallons, I was going to say 1.2. But yeah, 1.3. It gives both, but they're not in the same place, if I recall.
Right. So this, you'll find the Cessna charts. I think you've already looked through it, but the Cessna charts are a lot more straightforward.
Dude, it looks like it was like written and used some sort of technology to print this versus I think they literally did like the old timey stamp on those Piper ones where they have a guy with like a tray full of letters and then just printing presses it down.
Oh yeah. It's almost like Cessna designed it to be a trainer.
Yeah. Almost.
Almost.
They designed it to be clear, yeah.
Right. So, it's Cessna does a really good job with their performance calculations. So, whether they're lying to you or not, we can talk about that another time. Yeah. But they do a pretty good job with it. So you can see the different limits there. The center of gravity limits, again, I don't care if you know what the forward center of gravity inch limit is and the aft center of gravity inch limit is. You'll have a diagram, put your weight in the diagram, happy.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
The only thing really to note there is that the utility category envelope is a lot narrower than the normal category envelope. We'll look at that when we get into the weight and balance section, but it is a little bit narrower.
The actual chart.
Yeah, the actual size of the envelope is a lot smaller, as in the weights and the center of gravity range and things like that.
Yeah.
So
all right.
We'll talk about it. But there is one thing I do want to point out in these two center of gravity limits here. You see the reference datum, lower portion of the front face of firewall?
Yeah.
So that is the 0.0 inch point.
Okay.
Right. So when we're talking about, the seats are at 37 inches or what have you, or the fuel tanks are at 48 inches, it's in reference to that point, the lower portion of the front face of the firewall.
Okay, cool.
Just superfluous knowledge. You don't need to memorize that.
No, that's good. It's good to know.
So, cool. Then we get down to page 2-8 here, the normal category, maneuver limits and things like that. You can see there's a note there under the normal category maneuvers and recommended entry speed. It says abrupt use of controls is prohibited above 105 knots.
Yeah.
Well, 105 knots is the maximum weight maneuvering speed. Duh.
Yeah.
But the one that I want you to focus on, since you're in private training here, in primary training, is steep turns at 95 knots. That's going to be our target speed when we're doing steep turns. Okay,
so it is normal category maneuvers and recommended entry speed. Okay, so this is not...
So I actually tell you what speed to enter them at.
Right, okay. So this isn't like, don't do it, like this is the limit. Like that's what they're recommending you enter it at.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, so that's their recommendation.
All right.
So then I kind of skipped over it here, but just above that, you see under the normal category kind of header, you said this airplane is certified in both normal and utility category. Normal category is applicable to aircraft intended for non-aerobatic operations. These include blah, 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 but the angle of bank not to exceed more than 60 degrees.
Okay.
Right. That's a typical non-aerobatic limitation.
Okay. And commercials 50?
Commercial steep turns are done at 50 degrees, yes.
50, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So if we scroll to the next page, you'll find utility category. So utility category, you can see what the difference is. This airplane is designed or not designed for purely aerobatic flight. It does mean that you can do some sort of aerobatic maneuver, either one or multiple. But how the FAA defines aerobatic is very, very specific. Basically, anything that exceeds 30 degrees pitch or 60 degrees bank. When you do a spin, you're exceeding those, which is why it's defined as not purely aerobatic, but still technically per the letter of the law.
Right.
So the whole overarching thing of my flight training philosophy is, why do I care?
Yeah.
Right? So we go to page 2-10 to find out why I care. Boom. Load limits. Right? So normal category, you can see it with flaps up in a clean configuration is positive 3.8 G limit to negative 1.52 G limit.
Okay.
Right? It shows you the weight that limits, or the weight limitation that is the normal category there, right? 2550.
Yeah, okay.
Flaps down is the same for both normal and utility category. It's positive 3G with no negative limit. That means you don't go negative, so it's 0 to positive 3.
So you don't, with the flaps down, you don't ever want to go negative.
Correct.
Okay.
So, cool. Makes sense so far?
Yeah.
All right, and then the utility category, positive 4.4 to negative 1.76.
That's a lot of G.
It is a lot of G. And notice the positive actually increases a substantial amount more than the negative.
Yeah.
Negative G is very, very hard on airframes. Positive G is kind of just there.
Yeah.
But negative G is very hard on airframes.
Interesting.
So.
And 1G is enough to make your flight bag float, right?
Yeah, actually, if you go anything less, if you go anything on the negative side, you'll start to have vertical movement in some sort of direction, usually up. Anything on the negative side will move that. So if you get to 0.01 negative, technically your flight bag will start floating. Negative 1G sustained means that you're accelerating 9.8 meters per second away from the center of the.
Yeah, you're right.
Right. So again, down in the weeds, but that's the technical definition of it.
Okay.
So.
And that's, I mean, I as you can probably tell in, Bill in like full on learning mode, ask a lot of questions that probably are irrelevant. Don't, I won't feel bad if you who cares, dude, don't worry about that.
Hey, man, I make my living on answering irrelevant questions. Like, I fly charter for a living. Like, that's what I do.
What does this do?
What's exactly. Yep, I had passengers today drink literally the entire cooler.
Awesome.
Like, all of the drinks that we had in the cooler on a 1-hour flight.
Love it.
I was impressed more than anything else.
Yeah, I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
No, I was like, that is unbelievable. Not even that they were smart enough to find the cooler, but that they drank the entire thing. So, anyway.
Oh my god. I love it.
So that's the load limits, the weight limits, different entry speeds, design intentions, and philosophies. Any questions with those?
No, I don't think so.
Do you have any questions so far outside of those?
None that are pressing enough to. I have a million questions, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, write them down so that you don't forget, and remember to ask me them at some point.
Okay. Well, in some of them, I know we're gonna get to them, so it's like
cool.
Yeah. Like what is
in case we don't.
Typical steep turn? What is the positive G load on that 95 knot entry steep turn?
There's a graph.
Awesome.
We can look at the graph at some point. I don't have it handy. I don't think it's in the POH, but it might be.
Like it's a couple G, right? I kind of recall
it's
somewhere
like
between 2 and
1.3.
2.5. It could be.
Now, a 45-degree steep turn is like 1.3, I think.
Okay, so it's under 2.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You have to get to 60 degrees before you hit 2G.
Okay.
So, and that's sustained holding altitude.
Yeah. Right,
So,
right. Yeah, I mean you can get 2G if you bank it and just yank back, right?
If you will know when you have hit 2G. Like you will feel uncomfortable initially.
Yeah.
2G is not a lot, but when you're not used to G, you'll feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Okay.
So most people who don't fly aerobatic start getting uncomfortable about 1.5, 1.6 G. So,
yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. So moving on.
I'm a well-oiled machine, Brad. I can take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you can handle it. I'll give you 4.4 Gs tomorrow. We'll see.
Dope. All right.
So no, I'm
Utility
kidding.
category. Drain the tanks.
Yep, exactly. We're going to take off with 8 gallons of fuel. So the kinds of operation equipment or kinds of operation limits. This is just the FAA's catch-all and Cessna's catch-all to meet certification. Basically says you can do VFR or IFR under day or the known icing is prohibited. There is a damn good reason for that. Don't fly into known icing. This is my disclaimer.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Got it.
Moving on.
And it says it right here too. Flight into known icing conditions is prohibited. So okay.
Yep. Thou shalt not.
Awesome.
Right. So fuel limitations is next. We have the 56 total, 2 tanks, 28 gallons for usable of 53 gallons. Those 3 gallons of unusable fuel are included in the basic empty weight, so we don't really need to factor those in.
Okay. Is the engine oil in there too?
Yes, undrainable fluids are all factored into basic empty weight.
Okay.
So, cool. There's fuel limitations there. There's a note to ensure maximum fuel capacity and minimize cross-feeding when refueling. Park the airplane in a wings level, normal ground attitude, and place the fuel selector in the left or right position. If you park it on a slope and place it in the left or right position, you're going to get most of the fuel into the tanks. You'll probably be short a gallon or two, but if you're relying on a gallon or two, something has gone wrong.
So the that's one of the biggest like procedural differences, at least that I could foresee right now between the two planes, is the both selector, which I wish that freaking PA-28 airframe had.
Yep.
So when you're it should always be in both, right?
In general, yes.
In general, but when you're refueling, you got to select one or the other, or
so
left or right.
Feed. Yep. So it doesn't cross feed exactly.
Okay. And just explain like why, like the functionality behind why you don't want it to cross feed when you're refueling.
So it's basically to allow you to get the maximum amount of fuel into the tanks. Imagine you have the both tanks empty, right?
Yeah.
Each tank is its own separate entity, but there is a connection, right? There's a cross flow tube.
Right.
So if you fill up the entire right tank and you're done filling that tank up, you put the cap back on, you close it, and then you walk over to fill the left tank.
Yep.
The fuel is already starting to cross feed over.
Right. So you'd have to go back. You'd have to fill up the left tank and go back to the right tank and top that off.
So you put it to one selected, it blocks that cross feed, and there's that.
Once the liquid in whichever tank reaches the amount of pressure needed to actually send the fuel to the other tank, it's going to just start heading over.
Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So, cool. Additional fuel limitations. Takeoff and land with the fuel selector in both. Duh. Maximum slip or skid with one tank dry is 30 seconds. If you have run a tank dry, something has gone wrong. So don't really need to worry about that too much.
Maximum slip or skid duration, what does that mean?
So you can't slip the airplane for more than 30 seconds with fuel in only one tank. And the reason why is because it has to do with the collection point in the fuel tanks. So you have the possibility of starving your engine of fuel.
Okay. And what is a skid?
So you're familiar with a slip, right? Where you
Yeah.
have one wing down and the nose pointed outside of the wing down.
Right.
So imagine instead of pushing the nose to the outside, you push the nose to the inside.
Oh.
That's a skid.
Why would you do that?
Because you suck at the rudder.
So a skid is something that you, like, just a named term for something you shouldn't do.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm going to make a broad generalization that is not actually aerodynamically reflective, but I'm going to make this generalization to kind of help you think about it. Whenever an airplane stalls, it's in a skid. An airplane in a... I'm sorry, I take that back. Whenever an airplane spins, it is in a skid.
Okay. Yeah.
If the airplane is not in a skid, it likely will not stall.
Okay. Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Likely
yeah, I mean, it's like you're lowering the
spin.
wing that is essentially the slowest wing.
Kind of. It more has to do with yaw than a roll.
Okay.
So we'll talk a little bit about it tomorrow. It's a lot easier to visualize, and I can't use my hand motions to kind of show you. So we'll talk about it tomorrow.
Okay.
So, cool. Less than a quarter tank, prolonged uncoordinated flight is prohibited. Same thing, has to do with the collection point.
Mm-hmm.
Fuel remaining in the tank after fuel indicator reads 0 cannot be used safely in flight. Duh.
Okay, that's fair.
Then the two fuel grades that we can take either 100 low lead or 100 octane aviation fuel. So basically 100 low lead or 100 regular lead.
Yeah.
Yeah, so questions there?
No.
Okay, thing to take away, no skid, no spin.
Got it.
Okay.
And who sells green fuel?
I think there are a couple places still in the lower 48, but I don't know of them off the top of my head.
Not too many though, right?
No, I don't know of any in California.
Yeah.
So, cool. Other limitations, approved takeoff range, you can take off with flaps 0 or flaps 10. Approved landing range, you can land with flaps 0 to flaps 30.
Now, this may be a really stupid question, but why could you not take off with 2 notches of flaps in?
My really simple answer to that is because Cessna said so.
Okay, just like probably a drag. It'll just take you too much. Like,
yeah, the drag versus lift balance is not worth the trade-off.
Yeah.
But that would be my guess. I don't have any flight test data to support that, and I've definitely never taken off with full flaps before.
Right.
Definitely hasn't happened in 700 hours of flying on 72s.
And these things take off with no flaps fine anyway.
Yeah.
My dad, who has flown 172s a bunch and had a 140, he's as an owner, he said that he used to always take off with at least, or not with at least, but he'd take off with 1 notch of flaps in whatever plane. And he's like, I don't even know if this is correct or whatever, but I just felt like it made sense that it'll decrease my roll, takeoff roll, and save the tires. Is there any?
There might be some very small merit to that.
Yeah.
I don't think it's big enough to measure.
Right.
But,
okay. But not like nothing that you'd be like, it's not worth it to get hung up on. Like, you can, I guess, right? I mean, just make everything a short field, but like, if you don't need to, why, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I really wouldn't give it too much thought.
Yeah. All right.
But that's just kind of...
Yeah, these damn things take off so quick anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
they do fine.
900 feet, it's just like...
Less than that.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
You can get a 172 off the ground in 450, no problem.
Really?
So, oh, yeah.
With our big asses in there?
Uh-huh.
Sweet.
Yep, I'll show you. It can be done.
I love it.
So, cool. All right, so then we get to placards. Not really going to go through all this with you. This is just all the shit that's going to be posted in the airplane somewhere. All of these are required to be in the airplane, so if you see one missing, it's technically unairworthy.
Okay.
So I'm not going to test you on these. I don't think anybody reasonably would.
Yeah.
So then we get to section 3. Do you have any questions with section 2 or anything like that?
No, I do not. How are you? Do you need a water break or anything?
I'm going to take a quick drink here really quick if you
Okay.
want to get caught up on the chat.
Okay, cool. Thank you to Safa Jake for the follow. Welcome. Hope you guys are enjoying this. This is just so awesome. It's blowing my mind. I think a lot of you have been around Brad, in various Discords and chats and stuff. And, he's so generous with his knowledge. And this is really the first time that we've been able to sit down and dig into this stuff. And really the first time that I've been able to do this at all. So it's super, super interesting. And, like I said, I'm really focused on this and not on the chat. But if you guys do have any questions that come up, if we're in the middle of a little water break, it would help me if you guys have questions too, because it might be a question I never thought of. So.
All right.
Sweet.
Cool. And I have the chat open on the other monitor too, so.
Oh, cool. Okay.
If anybody has questions in the chat or anything like that, please throw them out. So, cool. Any questions on section 1, section 2? Any limitations that you want to bring up before we move on?
Am I misplaced in thinking that everything has been pretty simple so far?
Yep. Very straightforward.
Okay.
Remember that this is a training aircraft. It is not designed to confuse you. This is an overly complicated document for as simple of an airplane as it is.
All right. I mean, if you're doing anything besides straight and level, keep it between 95 and 105, basically, right?
Yeah, and even that, I mean, you'll find that you don't really need to worry about going outside that range very much.
Yeah.
It's just kind of one of those things to be aware of.
Yeah, okay.
So remember, I have had this airplane upside down in spins. I've had this airplane on its side. I've had this airplane as slow as 19 knots indicated. I've had it as fast as 160 indicated. It will do everything that you ask it to.
Nice.
So
160,
cool. Huh? Yeah, there's a story behind that.
Yeah. We talked about that.
We did, yes.
Yeah, we did.
I have video to prove it. Anyway, so questions answered on section 1, section 2?
Yeah. VTB says you all but have to try to kill yourself in 172.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the safest airplanes in the world. It can only just barely kill you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it wants to fly. It wants to be airborne.
I wouldn't stretch the truth that much. Like, it is still a flying washing machine.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, cool. So if you have no questions, we'll move on to section 3 then.
Yep, this is where the fun really starts.
Yes, the fun starts. So I'm not going to go through all of these with you right now.
Okay, cool.
Worry, I'm not going to beat these into your head.
Yeah.
But I do want to kind of show you how it's broken down and how Cessna approaches it.
Okay.
The first bit you'll have here is the introduction section and kind of the speeds to remember section. Notice they've got best glide in there, engine failure after takeoff with flaps up, flaps down. Landing without engine failure, flaps up, flaps down, right? So basically, what Cessna is trying to tell you is that if you are landing...
they say maximum glide for best glide.
Exactly, yeah, that's your VG speed, best glide. Basically what Cessna's trying to tell you here, if you look at these numbers, is that engine failure landing, either after takeoff or landing without engine power after a prolonged glide or something like that, you're going to be landing at a speed very, very similar to your normal landing speed. Speed down final usually is 60 to 65 knots, right? Under normal procedures.
Yeah.
So if you do 65 knots all the time, it doesn't matter if you have engines or not.
Okay.
You're going to be safe.
Cool.
Right? As long as you have the flaps down.
Okay. So we have flaps flaps down 65. Flaps
Yep.
up a little bit faster 70.
Yeah, 70.
Okay. So
You'll
there's
find
less
that,
lift and you just want to be going a little bit faster.
right, exactly. You're trying to compensate for that extra wing surface area.
Okay.
So basically, moral of the story here is that the abnormal emergency speeds are pretty much the same as their normal speeds, right?
Yeah.
The only one there is that you really need to memorize is that best glide speed, 68 knots.
Yeah.
And there's a little cheat code for this in the 172s. If you fail the engine in a 172 and trim it all the way nose up, you're going to be between 65 and 70 knots.
What?
So that's all you got to do. Here's the problem with that. It works really well if you have a confirmed engine failure, and it gets really, really funny for instructors if you have like a practice engine failure and then you go to recover, add full power, and forget to retrim. Because then you freak the hell out. It is hilarious. So it's really funny for instructors, not so funny for students. It'll be a very minor code brown there. And
it's just because it feels like the plane's broken kind of thing?
Say that again?
And it's because it just feels like it's broken and wants to just like flip over?
Well, you're trimmed for 65 knots, right?
Yeah.
So imagine what the pitch attitude looks like with full power at 65 knots.
It's going to want to just like go VTOL.
Exactly. So it will actually it'll slow down substantially. You can get yourself into a stall situation with that.
Yeah.
If you're not careful, but you'll notice something is wrong immediately. So.
And is it counteractable with full nose down?
Yeah, you can overpower it very easily.
Okay.
So. And you'll know immediately. You'll push power in, see the nose come up, and you go, oh shit, push the nose down and start trimming immediately.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Cool. So things I want to focus on for the emergency procedures tonight is on this page 3-4 here at the very top of it. This line right here is extremely, extremely important. Procedures in the emergency procedures checklist portion of this section shown in bold-face typed are immediate action items which are committed to memory.
Okay.
So these are the things that you do before you get the checklist out.
Okay.
And I will go so far as to say those are the only things you do before you get the checklist out.
Yeah.
So your mentality should be, for example, you have an engine failure aloft. We'll go down to page 3-5. Go down to engine failure aloft, and you see there are those 5 memory items there, right?
Engine
Airspeed,
failure
fuel
during...
shutoff.
Okay, it's engine failure during flight.
Right.
Okay.
The restart procedures.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You have those 5 bold items there, right?
Yep.
Those are the only things that you should do before you get the checklist out.
Okay,
right?
So we got airspeed, so 68 knots, fuel shutoff valve, push in, and that's on the bottom right-hand corner of the pedestal.
It's above the fuel selector, yep.
Fuel selector valve on both, so those are both close. Auxiliary fuel pump switch on, so probably switch hands for that maybe.
Yep, left hand.
Mixture rich. If restart has not occurred, ignition switch both, or start if propeller is stopped. Okay.
What your brain should say is aux pump on, mixture rich, checklist.
Aux
Don't
pump
go
on.
to the ignition switch. Don't go to the fuel pump off. Finish the bold-faced items. Go to the checklist.
Okay, say that one more time.
So you've got these first 5 items here that are in bold, right?
Yeah.
So you do item 1 through 5. You get to item 5, and item 6 in your head should be checklist.
Oh, okay. Got it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, you may know what items 6 and 7 are, ignition switch and aux pump off. You may know that, but go to the checklist. It builds in that foundation for later flights.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So you can see that some of these checklists have memory items, some of them don't. Generally, the ones that are more critical in critical phases of flight or things that could develop very rapidly will have memory items, versus ones that don't have memory items are generally more benign issues.
Okay.
Makes sense?
Yeah, I'm gonna make a little bookmark on here.
Cool.
All right. Yeah, okay, so engine failure during takeoff roll, throttle idle, apply brakes, checklist. Engine failure immediately after takeoff, airspeed, airspeed, and then checklist. I mean, that one.
And that one, I will say, pause on that for a second. Engine failure immediately after takeoff, FTFA. Right? Fly the fucking airplane. I don't care what the checklist says. You have less than 30 seconds to react.
As soon as I said that, like, immediate engine failure after takeoff, airspeed, and then go to the checklist. Like, I don't think so.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
That's the mentality I want you to have.
Yeah.
But there are some exceptions to that.
Right.
Okay. So, FTFA. That's the moral here.
And what does FTFA mean again?
Fly the fucking airplane. Yep, you'll hear me say that a lot.
All right. I dig it.
So.
Okay.
Yep. The FAA says that flight instructors should never swear during their flight instruction process.
Do they really? Is that actually in there?
Yeah, they do. It's in a book called The Fundamentals of Instruction, or I'm sorry, the Aviation Instructor's Handbook.
That's awesome.
Which, by the way, for any private pilots or above out there, if you want to see all the stupid shit your instructor does, look up the Aviation Instructor's Handbook. It's like peering behind the magic curtain. It's pretty scary.
It's like one of those things where if you see a warning or like a do not do something, you know that someone did that. That's why they have that on there.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Please don't dance on the mattresses. You're like, some jackass danced on the mattresses and they had to put up that sign.
Right. It's like the sign on the side of an iron that says warning, heated or hot when heated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or of course, the famous coffee lid on McDonald's coffee cups.
Yep. My other favorite one from the side of an iron: do not iron clothes while wearing them.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example of that only exists because somebody did that.
Some genius.
Yeah.
Made a lot of money on a lawsuit.
Somebody sued, and oh my god.
Yeah,
all right.
Exactly.
Love it.
So anyway, you can see kind of what the mentality is here with these memory items and what things call for an immediate action versus something that can kind of just be considered.
So this forced landing one doesn't have any bolded. So is that just the assumption is that you have enough time, like immediately go to the checklist?
Yeah. So think of it this way: what situation leads to a forced land?
I mean, engine failure.
Right, engine failure during flight, right?
Yeah.
So that's the checklist immediately above it, and that has 5 memory items. So the theory here is that you have attempted a restart.
Yeah.
The restart was not successful. Which
you're already at the checklist.
Exactly. So you have already passed the memory item stage. You're in the checklist, and you're doing it that way.
Yeah. Passenger seat backs, most upright position. Nice.
Yep. And the reason for that is for impact absorption.
Yeah. And probably exit too, right? I mean, that's like the airline thing. Is like it just makes it easy.
Backseat exits. Yep.
Okay. Cool.
So you can see some of them have memory items, some of them don't. The more critical stuff will have memory items, and the ones that aren't critical won't.
Okay. So I mean, we'll obviously get there, but in terms of tomorrow's flight, should I? I mean, none of these are like, oh my god, I have to go cram before an exam.
You can expect a non-memory item emergency tomorrow.
A non-memory item emergency?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I'm throwing this all at you tonight, so I'm not expecting you to memorize this by tomorrow.
Yeah. I mean, these are stuff that if you're like, all right, we're flying along and we have an engine failure. I mean, I could go through,
Yeah.
but fair enough. Okay.
Right. So, and that's something that may happen tomorrow. We'll just talk about it.
Okay.
I'll walk you through the memory items.
Right.
So, cool. Questions there?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, awesome.
No.
Let's see here. Really quickly, I want to look at page 3-11, just so I can point something out to you.
Okay. And I'm looking at all, like, we're going past these emergencies, and we're not necessarily going to talk about these, but
nope, not going to talk about them tonight. I'm going to leave you to study those, and we'll talk about them in depth later.
Okay. Shouldn't be anything different than what I know. I mean, like electrical fire and the engine fire full throttle, which is always a funny one for a new pilot, I think.
Yep, I've set a couple engines on fire in my time.
Have you really?
I have.
And you go full throttle and suck it in?
Depends on where I am and what the situation of the fire is.
Yeah.
The turbine engine that I set on fire was cut the fuel off, get outside, and make sure I'm not burning up. So
nice.
That's a story for another time.
Yeah, cool.
So 3-11 here, you're looking at the electrical power supply malfunctions, right?
Yeah.
Notice no bold-faced items.
Yeah.
So what is something that a lot of student pilots do? You have, oh, hey, the low voltage enunciator just came on. What do? Oh, well, I reach for the alternator. I start, doing X, Y, Z. I start shedding load and all this stuff. And it's like, no, go to the checklist.
Yeah.
If your alternator fails, you're going to notice the enunciator because it's right in front of your face, first of all. And secondly, you have a lot of time to deal with it.
Yeah.
So,
is that something is that something that you need to know versus something that you should know, like what the flight time is on a battery?
This airplane, you don't need to know it.
Okay.
Because this airplane, it's actually not published or predictable. The POH, I think, will give you an approximate, you should have about this much time, but it's not like the G1000 system where the G1000 guarantees you 30 minutes on the battery, or on the emergency battery.
Oh, okay.
Whereas this one is kind of like, you should have this amount of time.
Yeah.
So, makes sense?
Yep.
Cool. So that's kind of what I wanted to focus on with this particular page is there are no memory items. Go to the checklist.
Okay, so enunciator panel goes off. I'm pulling out the checklist, calmly turning the alternator switch off, calmly looking at the non-essential equipment.
Depending upon what the situation is.
Yeah. Okay.
So, cool.
Dude, this is this POH is so much better. Oh my God.
Yep. Well,
it
this
actually
POH
makes
is written in the style of large aircraft, believe it or not. As far as like the different procedures are written and things like that, the way it's numbered out in the different kind of flow chart mentality that they have.
Yeah.
It's written in that form.
Cool. Yeah, this is this makes
cool.
it
So you
almost...
have all these nice... Oh, it's too easy, right?
It's fun to read. It's like kind of fun to go through, and it's. I always felt that the Piper one was just like unnecessarily complicated and like not. I mean, I know it sounds kind of weird, but it's like not fun. Like I don't know if you've got the stream up. I mean, it's hard to read. It's just a pain in the ass. It's ugly. It doesn't really have like a nice flow. Just that, like, everything's all one weight. All the font is one weight kind of, and it's just like before starting engine, like that looks horrible. It's terrible.
I like to make the joke that Cessna charts were written by Germans, Piper charts were written by Americans.
Yeah, it's probably
and
probably a fair,
because the Piper charts are beautiful for TLAR. That looks about right.
Yeah. Seriously.
So. Yeah. Cool. So after we get through the individual system failures here and the different memory items and immediate actions following the memory items, you have this whole amplified emergency procedure section, right? Where it goes through like all of the super not unrealistic, but super kind of in the weeds, interesting possible abnormalities that you might experience. Things like landing. What's this one at the top? Where is it? Landing without elevator control. You know,
What?
like that is a published procedure.
Dope.
Here.
Trim for horizontal flight with an airspeed of approximately 65, flaps set to 20, by using throttle and elevator trim controls. Then do not change the elevator trim control setting. That's awesome.
So it's basically telling you how to execute what's going to be a controlled impact.
Yeah.
So is it easy to do? Yeah. Is it easy to do well without breaking the airplane? No.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this amplified procedure section here basically gives you the whole spectrum of things that could possibly go wrong in your systems.
And these there's two here that I am particularly interested in. Executing a 180-degree turn in clouds, which our lovely friend Jason Shappert did a great video on that.
Yep. A good pilot is always learning.
Emergency descent through clouds. So those are
Keith Smith.
Yeah, those are interesting.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
so these are all just
kinda...
kind of published. Like, here's some kind of odd, but also potentially.
I file that in the great information to have section.
Yeah.
You know.
Like, they're probably pretty rare, but also they're possible.
Right. It's shit that you don't care about until it happens.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
So things to consider, basically. So cool. That's section 3. Do you have any questions on section 3 or emergency procedures in general?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I'm excited to read through those because I think there's some really interesting potential there. For just practicing practical abnormalities, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, we could get very, very, very creative with things that have happened in airplanes that aren't anywhere that have been found in the abnormal procedures or things like that.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the highest profile accidents in aviation, they're things. The high profile ones are the ones where the crew had to come up with it on the fly.
Right.
You look at Sioux City, United 111, I think it was, or 131, I don't remember which. You look at Sioux City, where the DC-10 had the number 2 engine blow up and severed all of the hydraulic lines and basically rendered them completely without flight controls. There was nothing in the POH for flying without flight controls in a total hydraulic system failure.
Yeah.
So they had to come up with it on the fly and get creative.
Wow.
You look at Miracle on the Hudson, right? Cactus 1549. That was another situation where there's a procedure for it, but the procedure has since changed because of flight crew actions that made it way better. So United 232. Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. So, so it's stuff like that gets really interesting, where flight crews have to put their systems knowledge into practice immediately.
Yeah.
So.
And a lot of those, you really don't have a lot of time to go consult your book, right? I mean, your checklist.
Yeah, a lot of them are time sensitive. The Sioux City DC-10 was somewhat time sensitive just because they didn't know the extent of the damage.
Mm-hmm.
The Miracle on the Hudson was, I think, 200 something seconds from impact to touchdown.
Yeah.
Which is, just over 3 minutes.
Right.
So it's those are the kinds of things that you wind up getting known for, good, bad, or otherwise.
Right.
So cool. Any other questions on the emergency abnormals?
No.
Cool. So section 4 is normal procedures. This is your whole checklist, basically the super, super in-depth checklist, and it's 36 pages of shit that you can do for this airplane, for something that can really just be done with flows.
Section 4.
Yeah, section 4.
Okay, sorry. I was looking at revision 4, and I was like, this is.
You're good.
Okay.
So it's 36 pages of material for the normal procedures. Right? For an airplane that should take no more than like 5 minutes from engine start to wheels up.
Yeah. Yeah.
ATC obviously dependent, but
right.
It's
at French Valley. It'll take 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, we can really go down into the weeds here if we want, but you have all these amplified procedures and things like that.
It's kind of like the intersection of like what you are required to know, what you should know, and kind of what you need to do. And that's something that from the very first flight that you and I did, you're like, look, I do some things that I don't want you to pick up as a habit, but I can also
do as I say, not as I do mentality.
Yeah, but I can, and although I will adhere to that, I can still see why you do what you do, and kind of where you can get to the point where that is an acceptable method. At this point in my experience, I'm gonna at least have the checklist in my hand for even the mundane stuff.
Absolutely. And the fun part is you're gonna have the checklist memorized.
Yeah.
And after enough flying, I'm sure you have the checklist memorized in the Archer.
Yeah.
And I'm still gonna make you use it.
Yeah.
And I'm still gonna make you look at it.
Right.
It could just be, all right, I'm looking at the damn thing even though I'm telling you what I already know what it is.
Yeah.
I'm still going to make you do it because at some point there's a high possibility you wind up flying something other than a 172, which has some gotchas.
Right.
So it's good to have those foundational instincts built in.
Yeah, I don't think I would, unless in a, except in a case where I've got, hundreds of hours in a plane, it's my plane, and I just know it, like similar to you in the Bonanza, but even with the Piper, I did have that thing memorized, but every pre-flight check I did, I have the checklist in my hand and I can go through it without looking at the checklist, but every single time I am going through the checklist again and going, okay, I did that. And I don't need to go, okay, what's next? I check the oil. What does it have to be? 6. Okay, check it. Like stuff that immediately.
Right.
But, and I do this at work too. And it's kind of partially like how I operate normally and from the, flying. I have a checklist every day at work where I know, just kind of the nature of my job at the moment where it is kind of checklistable. And I have coworkers that are like, dude, do you have a checklist for your entire day? I go every day and I check off everything when I finish it every single day. I can do that in my sleep, but I do it every day.
Yeah, and it's a good habit to build.
Yeah, because you're going to forget. It frees your mind too. That's what it's, having a list has always done to me is like I can go to sleep at night and close my eyes and go like, I didn't forget anything today because I checked it off. I have a mark next to everything that I did. I don't, did I do that? Damn it.
Yep. Yeah, I have a limited number of brain cells. I don't always want to devote them to shit that I can write down. So I only have X number per day, and I'm approaching Y.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, are you on call on Sunday?
Sunday I am. I think there's a trip that day. Let me look.
Is there an 8-hour buffer between us finishing up on Saturday and you having to fly?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Oh, hey, they sold an Aspen trip tomorrow. Cool. Anyway, so, normal procedures. So, this is your whole expanded checklist and, the things we do on a day-to-day basis. But the very beginning of the checklist here has some speeds for you.
Yeah. Okay.
So this is page 4-5 where we're looking at, and you've got normal climb out and short field takeoff and all these speeds, right?
Yeah.
The ones to highlight here are going to be your best rate of climb speed and best angle of climb speed. Notice how they change as altitude increases. Right?
Oh, okay.
It goes from 74 to 72 for your VY, best rate of climb. versus 62 to 67 for best angle of climb.
Okay.
What do you think happens when those two speeds meet?
What happens when those two speeds meet?
Right, because best angle of climb increases, right, with altitude?
Best angle of climb increases. Yes.
Yeah. See that, how it goes from 62 to 67?
Yeah.
And then best rate of climb goes from 74 to 72.
Yeah.
Right, so if they continue on that trend, then they're going to meet at some point, right?
Oh, I see. I see what you're getting at. Yeah. Then you stop climbing.
Right, you stop climbing. So you're at that speed with full power.
Yeah.
And nothing's happening.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
The reality of the situation is that because of the way engine power is and the way the atmosphere works in different areas of slightly varying pressure and temperature and things like that, you're actually going to be doing what's called skipping on the top, right? So you'll climb 50 feet, descend 50 feet, climb 50 feet, descend 50 feet, and you'll kind of just be in that zone where you're in, 100 to 50 to 100 foot window.
Yeah, you basically don't have enough. The engine doesn't have enough power to compensate for the lack of lift.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
You can't make enough thrust to compensate for the weight.
Yeah.
Or lift to compensate for the weight.
Yeah.
So that's called the absolute ceiling, right? Where you're not climbing more.
Okay.
It's different than the service ceiling. You've probably heard service ceiling before.
Yeah.
This does not apply to transport category aircraft. It does not necessarily apply to multi-engine aircraft. But for the size of airplane that we're flying, the service ceiling is the altitude at which you have 100 foot per minute climb.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Whereas the absolute ceiling is the thou shalt not climb higher limit.
Well, I mean, thou can't climb higher.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So, cool.
I mean, you're going to be, what is that in most practical sense? Is that standard pressures and temperatures?
Kind of depends on the weight.
Yeah.
I have known of normally aspirated 172s to get as high as 18,000 feet.
Yeah.
I can't comment as to how that was possible or who did it.
Yeah, just like a friend, just like someone you knew that. Like
some dude. Yeah, I don't know. Some guy with too much time on his hands.
I read it. I saw it on Reddit once.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was on Facebook. I don't know. But anyway, I've been told that it can get as high as 18. I'm sure it'll go higher under the right conditions. But service ceiling, I think, is 14 for a 172S.
Yeah, 14. Yeah.
So, anyway, so these speeds are mostly reference here. Landing approach speeds, you have a flaps up and a flaps down range. Notice that 65 knots for flaps up or flaps down is the good speed for both ranges, right? So as long as you're 65 knots, I don't care what your flap configuration is, you're good. Right?
Yeah.
Now,
from a practical standpoint, I was going to say doesn't matter. It obviously matters.
Nope. You're going to listen to what the airplane's telling you, and you're going to be looking for a sight picture. I don't really care what that number is on the gauge, for the most part. You will know, and even if you don't know it immediately right now, when looking at these numbers, you will know if it doesn't feel or look right.
Well, I was actually going to say about the flaps, like if you're flaps up or flaps 30 or what is this? What is so it's 10, 20, and 30?
Yep, 10, 20, 30.
Okay.
Normal landings I teach at 30 degrees unless it's windy. And I don't have a cutoff number for flaps 20 versus flaps 30. It's kind of just like, does flaps 30 feel like it's overkill? All right, we'll use flaps 20. And that's something you'll develop over time.
Yeah.
The airplane is demonstrated with max crosswind at flaps 30, so it can do up to 15 knots guaranteed at flaps 30. So I wouldn't really worry about it too much.
That's pretty extreme too.
That you're going to be hard pressed to find that in SoCal.
Yeah.
So Riverside maybe.
I'm not going up during Santa Ana, so.
Oh well, that's no fun.
And I'm not. Let me rephrase. I'm not going up without Brad.
Yeah, take someone with you who's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you can see there are a whole wide range of speeds here for various different operations that would be considered, quote, normal, unquote. But basically, you're going to be flying a sight picture for the most part.
Yeah.
So, know the
yeah, I mean,
speeds
these
as
are all
well, like,
pretty. I mean,
format.
just from like a testing regurgitation, book learning.
Mhm.
You know, these all look pretty similar.
Yep.
You know, I mean, is it just like 65 is kind of what you're looking for? You know, and
65 is a beautiful number in a 172.
yeah, all right.
You know, it's close enough to best glide. It's a safe speed with any flap configuration for landing. It's a safe speed for engine failure landing. 65 is a beautiful speed in a 172.
Yeah. What's the normal climb out range? I've always, Tony taught to climb out at VY.
That's typically what I do in trainers.
Okay.
Mostly because you're not really trying to get anywhere. Like, if you really want to get to the practice area, we can get to the practice area and save 30 seconds doing it. But if you climb at a faster rate, you'll get to cruise faster, which means you'll get the power up faster. So it's a wash.
Right.
Or the speed up faster, I should say. So it's a wash.
Okay. All right.
So we can play around with it. I'll show you a little secret to the 172 is that I like to say that it has two VY speeds, two best rates of climb. Because the 172 best rate of climb published in the book is 74 knots at sea level. If that gives you 700 feet per minute, if you have full power climbing at 90 knots, you'll get 600 feet per minute. So it's basically VY minus 100 feet per minute at 90 knots.
So you it's like a bell curve.
Pretty much.
So it's the faster you go, it's gonna start to go down a little bit, but once you get to 90, it'll go back up again. Or is it decrease? It only decreases.
A little bit. It really only decreases from VY. Like, VY is the top of the bell curve, right?
Got it. Okay.
But it's a very, very gradual decrease until you get to about 90, 95 knots, and then it really drops off.
Got it. Cool.
So you'll see when we play around with it.
Yeah.
But cool.
Sweet.
So that's the speed list. Questions there?
No, this is good. This is really awesome.
I have one question for you.
Okay.
We talked about maximum demonstrated crosswind there, that 15 knot speed. Do you know what a maximum demonstrated crosswind is?
Maximum demonstrated crosswind.
And I will add a secondary question to this. Is it a limitation?
No, but it's the maximum that this plane was tested at, I think.
Exactly. It's the maximum crosswind component that a Cessna test pilot took the airplane up and was like, yeah, it'll do this.
Okay, cool.
You know, I can tell you for a fact, from personal experience, that a 172 will land in a 27 knot crosswind.
Jesus, dude.
Been there and done that. It will do it. It's not pretty, but it will do it.
That's awesome.
So
that's awesome.
You don't see that as a limit.
Cool. Okay. I pulled deep for that answer. That's awesome.
Yeah. Good answer. So, questions on the speed list or anything like that?
I don't think at the moment. No. Let me just run through here. So we got takeoff. VY short field takeoff. That's fine. Short field takeoff, flaps 10, speed at 50 feet. Okay, yeah, I don't think so.
Cool. Now, that short field takeoff speed at 50 feet, 56 knots, don't get yourself wrapped up in that. That's not VX. That's not a speed that you need to remember. That is just a reference speed.
Okay.
And I'll show you why here in a second.
You feel the plane. Actually, I do have a somewhat less practical question here. So, short field approach, full flaps. We have talked about making kilo at John Wayne.
Say that again.
We've talked about making the kilo taxiway landing at John Wayne. this number, this 60, what is it, 61 indicated. Yeah. That, I mean, these are conservative, relatively.
Yeah, you won't even get close to making kilo if you're crossing numbers at 61.
Right. So it will do a lot less.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll show you that tomorrow.
Awesome.
Yeah, don't worry. It'll go slow. Don't you worry. Cool. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so that speed there, that's 61 knots, that's going to become important when we start looking at performance. Because all of our performance numbers, our short field landing distance that we calculate, things like that, are based off of a specific profile. So that speed is part of that profile.
Okay. And that's really for calculation purposes. I mean, if you're calculating a short field performance and you've calculated that based on the 61 and you come over at 55 and land 200 feet shorter, then that's fine, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
Questions there?
No.
Fantastic. Scroll down, you'll get to the exterior pre-flight inspection, including the cabin as well. So I guess it's the total pre-flight, not just the exterior. Notice it is counterclockwise around the airplane, starting at the pilot's door, moving backwards.
Yeah.
Pilot's door, you move all the way back to the empennage and keep walking around the airplane that way.
Yeah.
I'll let you roll through it on your own, the pre-flight checklist here, so you can kind of take a look at things that are different, things that are the same. But I like to make the joke that we've got one engine, 2 wings, 3 wheels, let's go fly.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. It's very, very straightforward compared to the Piper. Obviously you have, the starting point is different just because of where the door is. But this was one of the big things that I liked about the Rep Pack 172 is I haven't done it in the last few flights in that thing that I've done, but I try to do that checklist pretty often, if not,
sure,
as many times as possible.
Yeah.
And
if it helps, it helps.
It's pretty much exactly the same as this.
Yeah, good. I'm sure this is what they built it on. So
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Really not a whole lot of gotchas on this. Just the one thing. Actually, I guess 2 things I'll really quickly mention. The pitot heat check, I don't care. You don't have to do the pitot heat check. I could give a shit.
Yeah.
And then the fuel sumps. The 172S has 13 fuel sump points.
Yeah, I know.
5 on each wing, 3 underneath.
I know.
So you do have to check all of them every time we fly the airplane. I have found water in the fuel tanks of 172s and Cardinals before, so please check them.
Yeah, that's quite a bit more than the 3 on the PA-28.
Yeah. Think of it as Cessna being more thorough.
Yes, that's good.
So.
That's that. Thank you for pointing that out because that is true, and there's 5 on each wing.
Yep.
And
5 each
3
plus 3 underneath.
And you know what? We actually have now that I think about it, a nice Cessna 172 right here.
Hey, how about that?
Oh, let's not do that tomorrow. Jesus. All right. Hold down control. That will stop you from... Damn it. Am I not going to be able to go down with the free camera?
I don't think you can get low enough.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this the Rep 172 that you're using?
I don't know why it won't let me do
So
that.
if it's got the pre-flight, you should be able to go through with that.
Yeah, but I don't think it shows under the wing. I don't think it actually shows the actual sump locations.
Yeah, I don't see them there because there's one outboard of the Stride, so I don't see them there.
Yeah, I don't think it shows it. Yeah, it just checks. It's like water contamination, none.
Yep. I like how they give you the color there to cross-reference with.
Yeah, but look at that. That is from that picture of the plane is from the POH.
Yep, sure
That is the exact one.
So
I don't know if you can see even the underbody.
nah, it doesn't look like there's any down there.
All right. Well, that's a bummer.
Yep. So anyway, you've got the whole pre-flight checklist there if you want to go through that.
Yeah.
Tomorrow, I think we're planning on meeting at what, 1 or 12:30 for a 1 departure ish.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I think I should be back by then. Like I mentioned, I'm flying with Paul in the morning, so
Okay.
it's going to be a 10 a.m. departure. We're flying a jet, so 11 to San Luis Obispo, maybe.
Are you going? You're going to you're going to Slow and back?
Yeah, the thing is, we're taking it up to 37 to check the pressurization and check the high altitude performance, make sure everything's working.
Oh, okay. It's not an actual charter.
No. I'm flying with Paul in his 501.
Oh, yeah. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Just going to breakfast.
Roger. Got it.
So yeah, it should be back reasonably soon. So I get to talk LA Center into giving me flight level 370 on a 120-mile flight. That's going to be fun.
That's awesome.
So
you want?
They're going to be
what?
like, you want to do what? Yeah. So, and it's going to take us forever to get there too.
Oh man, are you going to have to circle around to get up there?
Oh yeah. We're going to have to go all the way to Fresno.
Oh crap.
Like, yeah, it's going to be fun. But then we're going to probably do an emergency descent. So, out of 37.
Damn, that'll be exciting.
Yep.
Is he a commercial pilot or just the?
He has, I think, just his private multi.
Okay.
Private multi with instrument rating and a CE 500 type rating.
Yeah. Huh.
So,
that's cool.
I think.
Jerry flight.
Yeah, except with 2 people who know what they're doing. He trains more than I do. He goes to flight safety every month.
Oh, jeez.
So
wow.
the dude is one of the most conservative and safe pilots I think I've ever flown with.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, you've got this whole normal procedures in here, right?
Yeah.
You can kind of run through what the different procedures are. You can anticipate never starting this airplane with ground power. So always going to be a battery start, unless something is wrong, in which case you're using ground power. But for the 99.999% of the time, it's going to be a battery start.
Is there a checklist in the plane?
There is, yes.
Okay.
I am a terrible instructor and I've never used it, so I have no idea what it says.
Okay.
So we will find out together exactly what that checklist looks like.
Yeah. All right.
But
yeah. And I mean, it's not like we don't have backups too. I mean, we have.
Yeah, we've got this, or
yeah,
we'll figure something out.
I think there is a checklist for 172s actually on ForeFlight. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
And I'm sure it's, of all of them, probably the most.
Yep, that 172S would work just fine.
Yeah.
So, yep, I'm not worried about it.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
So, yeah, it's in there somewhere. So I will let you go through this checklist on your own time.
Okay.
But we're going to talk about, one of the things we'll brief tomorrow when we get to the airplane is what I like to call the floor to door flow, or the door to floor, whichever one works. Basically, you start at the door or start at the floor, and you work your way across the switches down the center pedestal, right? So battery, mags, fuel pump, throttle, mixture, fuel selector as you work your way down, right? Basically, everything you need to do in the airplane can be done with a door to floor or a floor to door.
Okay.
I see you're looking at it now.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, like you just kind of door being, like the side of the airplane.
Yeah, left side panel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so basically you're going to do that door to floor check or that door to floor flow every single time you do something in the airplane. You've probably seen me do it in the Bonanza too, where I just do the same flow every time. I just basically do the same flow like 4 times in a row.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm just changing one thing at a time every time I'm doing it. So that's kind of all there is to it as far as checklists are concerned. As long as you do that door to floor and just put things where they need to be, then you're good. The problem is learning that intuition to put them where you need to be. So that's where we use the checklist, right?
Yeah.
So whenever we do a checklist in this airplane, it's going to be a flow before the checklist. So we're going to do that door to floor, then we're going to back it up with the checklist.
Could you give me an example of like what you would like something like just give me an example of that if you could.
Of how you would use it?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say we're going to do the run-up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Engine started, we're sitting in the run-up area at 1,000 RPM, just waiting to do the run-up, right? We're going to do a floor-to-door. So we're going to come down to the bottom, we're going to make sure the fuel selector's on both, the fuel shut-off valve is in, the mixture is full rich, the throttle we bring up to 1,700 RPM. So you see how we started at the bottom and moved our way up?
Yeah.
Right? So the throttle we bring up to 1,700 RPM, we come across, all the light switches are where they should be, the avionics are on, the master is on, then we do the mag check, right?
Yeah.
Left, right, left, back to both. We come up through the engine gauges, make sure we've got pressures, temperatures in the greens, green. And then we run back across the exact same way. Run back down to the switches, it's on both. Everything is where it should be on the silver switches. Throttle back to 1,000 RPM, mixture back to lean for ground idle. Fuel selector still on, fuel shut off still on. Checklist.
Okay.
Right? So you go up from the bottom through the gauges, back down through the top.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yeah, I like that.
So it's kind of just a simple way to do it.
So if I do that, and this is like both from a practicality standpoint and like you as the instructor, if I do that and do it perfectly, you still want to see me check to pull out the checklist and go, okay, I did that. Okay.
Because how will you know that you did it perfectly?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You forget stuff.
Right.
So flow, then checklist. Does it take a little bit longer? Yes. Is it a lot safer and more efficient? Also yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's focusing less on the minutia and more of, okay, what looks abnormal?
Right.
So, as opposed to, looking for specific values or things like that. Plus the checklist is kind of all over the place in these airplanes, and it makes more sense to just run that door to floor and floor to door.
Yeah. Okay.
So, questions there?
Nope.
Cool. So, you can kind of run through the normal procedures and the amplified procedures with that mentality in mind, with that door to floor flow. But for the most part, we will just kind of leave the learning process there for tomorrow in the airplane.
Okay.
So, questions?
I don't think so.
Cool. Okay, drink break.
Cool. Yeah, 172s have the external power is on the left side, if I am not mistaken.
I think it depends on the year.
Yeah, like this one, I think it's right. I think there's that right there is where I've seen the GPU plugged in. It doesn't look like it's openable.
Yeah, I think on the straight R and S models, it's a screw that you have to open it with a screwdriver.
Oh, okay.
I know the G1000Rs and G1000Ss, it's actually a push button like the oil cap, and you can open it that way.
All right, yeah. In the sump, the Piper only had 3 of them, so it wasn't a huge concern. But at least on the left side, where I would do the forward cowl sump on the left side there, and then the left wing sump, I used the same fluid amount.
Uh-huh.
Like I didn't drain it after each one. Is that the same in the Cessna?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Okay. So you do the wing, right wing, drain it, under, left wing, drain it.
Yeah, that should be okay. It's just going to be a matter of how much gas you can get into your sump cup.
Yeah. Do we? Does the plane have one?
It does. I hate it.
Yeah.
It's really annoying, but it does have one. I'm thinking about buying one and putting it in the airplane just because I hate the one that's in there. But I'll have to talk to the owner and see exactly why he likes that one, or if it was kind of just like it came with the airplane. So
yeah.
just left it in there.
I mean, that's something I can do too. Like, and if there's anything like that where, hey, this plane has one or doesn't have one, but I would pick up a blank. Let me know. And
yeah, and I mean, at this point, it's been through training for so long that it's pretty much got everything it needs. But
okay,
it's still. The owner's the kind of guy who is more than happy to be like, yeah, I didn't think about doing it that way. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Cool. Does he fly this plane ever? Like, does he ever take it out and zip around?
Not really.
Yeah.
Pretty much only when he needs to. Like, if there's a crew up in Van Nuys or something and he's got to do a crew swap with them, then he'll fly the airplane up there and swap and have whoever he's picking up fly it back.
Cool.
But he has a number of different aircraft, not just limited to airplanes, that he flies for fun.
Nice.
So, or will be flying, I should say, when the renovation's complete. So, cool. So that's section 4. You can kind of run through that at your own convenience. If there's one thing I do want you to take a look at tonight or tomorrow morning, if you get a chance, look at the procedures for go around, and we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Is there anything in there that stands out versus what I've done in the past?
Nope. I just think it's one of those things that's not covered enough. Pilots focus all this time on successful landings and short field landings and soft field landings and oh man, we put it right on the spot we wanted to. And how often do you go around? Very, very rarely. Especially in the turbine world. I flew 490 something hours in the Sovereign and I never did a go around.
So you got to you have to keep sharp on that procedure.
Yeah, exactly. You forget it. 172, it's not that big of a deal. It's, pitch, power, positive rate, flaps up.
Yeah.
In increments.
Right.
In the Sovereign, it's like, oh, shit. In the Bravo, it's like, oh, shit. So it's one of those things that you want to stay fresh on for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that starts here. I think it's important to get into that procedure now if you ever get to that point where you're flying something like that.
Cool.
So that's section 4 for the most part. Questions, comments, concerns, funny stories, anecdotes,
balked landings,
limericks,
that's
vignettes.
I like that they say balked landings.
Yes, as opposed to you suck, you're going around.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty funny.
Cool.
I think we'll like some of the stuff before takeoff. That's all this is all stuff that we're pretty familiar with. En route climb 70 to 80 full throttle mixture rich above. Yeah, there's some just the little things that once we come to them, it's like a one-time thing, and then I'll never forget it. But this looks like the same too. Climb out full throttle. If you're at VY, cool. Mixtures full rich until 3,000, and then just kind of lean.
Yeah, lean it as needed.
Yeah, power, cruise power. That's all fine too. Now the plane does have an autopilot.
It does.
We're not going to use that, right?
I'm going to make sure you know how to use it and know the limitations of it.
Okay.
But for the most part, I'm not going to be having to use it.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really make sense for a training environment to be able to use it. But,
it'll be cool because I've never flown with one before, so it'll be kind of cool.
You're going to be shockingly underwhelmed by this autopilot.
Yeah.
The autopilot that I have in the Bonanza is way better.
Yeah. Well,
So-
just the like flying and then turning the heading bug and having it chase that, like that will be cool to me. I will find that very amusing.
And then you're going to set an altitude or something like that. It's going to be like plus or minus 100 feet. The heading will be like plus or minus 5 to 10 degrees, and you're like, wow, this thing sucks.
Oh,
like,
really?
I can do better than this. Yeah, especially in turbulence. In smooth
Okay.
air, it's not so bad, but in turbulence, it's like, wow, this thing is terrible.
So by sucks, you mean that it's just not accurate?
It's just awful. Like, it is just really disappointing.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting.
but it's the crap 140, you know.
Yeah. Crap one.
So, yep.
Nice.
So, cool. Any other questions on section 4?
I don't think so. You know what? While I'm looking at the landing checklist, I started asking this question when we were in the Bonanza the last time,
Yeah.
and we were interrupted by landing. The Papy lights.
Yes.
I tend to err on being high on approach,
Sure.
because I'm a low time student pilot for one,
Right.
but also because so often John Wayne is caution wake turbulence
Yep.
when you're coming in. So
Wake or an aircraft holding between.
yeah,
Yep.
caution jet blast, that kind of crap. So I've just kind of been forced to take a little bit higher approach.
Sure.
And the answer I'm anticipating is going to be like, we'll look at it tomorrow. But sight picture wise, aside, when are you going for red on that Papy?
If I'm flying to an unfamiliar airport or if I have a lot of runway available, never.
Okay.
Perfect world, you're flying 2 whites and 2 reds all the way to the flare.
Okay.
Because that Papy is going to take you to the intended touchdown point unless it's a non-standard runway.
Okay.
Which, of course, most of them are.
Right.
So, in general, you don't ever want to go for red unless you have a reason to.
Yeah.
Whether that be short runway or limited performance or weather or whatever it is. You want to stay on that normal glide path for as long as possible.
Okay. And an exception to that would be, like we were talking about with the short field, at an airport like John Wayne.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the interesting thing about John Wayne is that it's a synthetic short field, right? And what I mean by that is that the runway length is actually 2,800 feet, but how much of it is actually usable? Well, if there's nobody holding between the runways, it's 2,800 feet. If there is somebody holding at Lima, it's closer to like 2,300 feet.
Yeah.
22 or 23. From taxiway Kilo to the end of the runway is 2,300 feet. So, if you're on deck by Kilo, you've got most of the runway available to you.
Yeah.
But how often is that possible? You still have to clear the jet blast if there's somebody holding it. So,
yeah.
It's a deceptively short runway.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like, and it's probably closer to Kilo, but I feel like a lot of the times I'm between Kilo and Juliet.
Yep, about halfway down is usually the normal touchdown point if there's somebody holding between the runways.
Yeah.
Which, 172, not a big deal.
Right.
Something like,
Bonanza.
example 310.
Yeah.
That's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
So, and Tower knows that.
Right.
So, yeah. This is a great segue into what I was going to talk about next in section 5, actually.
Sweet.
With some of these distances and performance values and things like that. Not going to talk too much about the climb or cruise charts today since we're not going anywhere.
And that's 427.
I'm into section 5 now.
You are, okay. All right. Yeah, I see the cruise power and it's 427. Stall spins, blah, blah, blah. God, this POH is so much better.
Yeah, it's very, very, very thorough.
Yeah, thorough, but surprisingly readable.
Right.
Okay, so
So you're into section 5 now.
Yeah.
You can see
5.3.
kind of the table of contents there on 5-1. The very diverse section of charts and figures and options that you have in order to calculate shit. A lot of these are similar to the form or figures that you'll have in general in section 1. A lot of these are shit that you don't really care about, like the endurance profile. I don't care. The Crosswind components, yeah, for pre-flight planning. The stall speeds, I don't care. Temperature conversion chart, I don't care. All stuff like that, right?
Now, you don't care as a private pilot, or you don't care as an instructor?
I just don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
in general. You know?
But are the DPEs going to care?
No.
Okay.
No. You know, if you need to do a temperature conversion, then you can look up the chart. But you're not going to need to know that off the top of your head.
Okay.
You know, same thing with the stall speed. What's my stall speed at a 60-degree angle of bank? I don't know. The stall horn's going to come on. You know, or the airplane's going to buff it.
You know, I never thought about that.
Yeah, it's like I don't care.
Yeah, I don't need to know that. When it is time for that, I will be made aware of that.
Right, exactly. The stall horn comes on and you go, I guess we're getting kind of slow.
Interesting.
You know?
Okay.
Is it a cavalier attitude? Maybe. But, you know, it's the airplane docks to you.
Yeah. Well, knowing that it does change, I think is an important thing to know just from an aerodynamic standpoint. Like,
absolutely.
The higher the bank, the lower or the higher the stall speed is going to be.
Right.
Like,
and it's an exponential scale too.
Yeah.
It's not a
linear
sort of thing. Yeah.
God, dude, we could get so into the weeds. It's not even funny.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my God, I would just.
This is talking at the private pilot level. You know, you start getting into the commercial pilot level and the ATP level, and I'm going to drag you way down.
Do you want to see if we can get like a co-PhD and like split it?
Yeah, right?
Oh
yeah, that would be pretty funny.
That would be pretty funny.
So, anyway, so I was coming down here to page 5-14, short field takeoff distance.
Yes.
Kind of looking at that. So
5-14.
we talked about.
Okay.
Yeah,
I can just blow. I'm just blowing through these, right? We're just.
Yeah, you can just keep
angle of bank 45. Blah blah blah. Okay.
Yeah, there's your stall speeds. Yep.
This. Which one? Oh
so
yeah.
5-14 is what I'm looking at now.
Okay.
So the important thing to note about these performance charts here is that the notes at the bottom of them are very, very important. Notice that you have, a decrease in distance with headwind, an increase in distance with tailwind. They're down on note 3, as well as operations on dry grass runways increasing by the ground roll figure. So, what do you think is missing in these conditions that might influence landing distance? Or not landing distance, I'm sorry, takeoff
roll.
So
weight
for sure. So scroll down to 5-15. Or scroll across, I guess. Scroll to the next page. So there's a lower weight, right? There's 2,400, and then 5-16 is actually going to be 2,200. So weight is factored.
Okay.
But you're absolutely correct. At that particular chart is for a specific weight. So you're 100% correct there.
Okay.
What else is missing?
Okay, so we have short field technique, prior to takeoff elevation, decrease 10%. So we got headwinds, we got dry grass. So elevation is captured, wind is captured.
Yep. Think about Catalina.
Surface condition?
Surface condition, potentially. Runway slope. Right? There's no mention of slope anywhere in this POH for distances, so that's something.
Yeah.
What else?
If you're at Lukla, you have a lot shorter ground roll.
Right.
Temperature.
Okay, maybe. Take a look at the chart there. You've got some standard temperatures,
Yeah,
right?
temperatures are there. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, good. So that is considered as part of it.
I mean, hell, humidity.
Sure, humidity. Yeah.
Humidity is not going to be captured there.
Nope. Yeah, you're right. It's not tabulated. It's not considered. So that's something to think about. Humidity doesn't make that much of a difference on density altitude, but it is a very minor factor.
Okay. What is not captured? Wind?
No, winds are there. So the big things for me that kind of surprises me, there is no normal takeoff data. Notice it's just short field technique. Flaps 10 with a 51 degree rotation, or 51 knot rotation speed. So there is no normal data. And there is no wet runway data. Right? This is a dry runway only.
Interesting.
So in a 172, doesn't really matter that much, but it's kind of interesting pointing it out that this is for dry runways only, and you have no wet runway data.
Is there? I mean, if you used the 15% for dry grass, I mean, is that a safe
that would
assumption?
That would probably cover it. And as far as takeoff distance is concerned, because you don't have an abort speed, your dry runway versus wet runway numbers are going to be almost the same. But when it comes to landing distance, it could be slightly different.
Yeah. Okay.
So just something I figured I'd point out to you. It's not worth, going down into the weeds to think about it, but it's something that's kind of like interesting.
Yeah. I mean, how do these things slow, like aero brake versus the PA-28 in your experience?
I haven't done a whole lot of landings in PA-28s. I've got a fair bit of time instructing in them, but obviously I was watching someone else land.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I can tell you that you can do no brake landings in these things, no problem.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, cool. So typical operating weight for us, probably, 35 gallons, 100, call it 200 pounds of gas. Plus the two of us, 7, 16, 20. Doing math in my head is kind of hard this late at night. Probably about 2,400-ish pounds is going to be pretty close to what we got.
We could do this. We could get this tomorrow.
But I don't know the empty weight of the airplane.
Yeah. I mean, we know what the standard empty weight is.
Right.
It's in there.
I think this one's slightly heavier.
Yeah, we don't know what the moment.
We'll take a look at it tomorrow for sure. Definitely before we go fly.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I'll want to keep like a profile with both of our weights in there, and that'll be pretty helpful today.
Absolutely.
Go edit.
So you've got short field takeoff distance here on page 5-15 at 2,400 pounds. That's going to be pretty close to our typical operating weight.
Okay.
Typical temperature for this time of year is going to be, call it 20 degrees Celsius at sea level, right?
Yeah.
You look at a ground roll under these conditions, under a short field takeoff with an airborne speed of 48 knots, you're looking at 860 feet.
Yeah, cool.
Right? That's not much. You're going to be able to get that out of a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Can you get it off the ground in less distance than that? Yes. Can you clear the 50-foot obstacle in a shorter distance than 1470? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not a Cessna test pilot. I can't tell you that for sure. But this is their technique that they designed in order to safely and consistently meet these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do these procedures perfectly, these are worst case scenario numbers,
Okay. And just this is, I mean, this is kind of a 101 thing, but the total feet to clear 50-foot obstacles, that's basically saying you've got you take off and then you got 600 feet of room to climb out at least 50 feet.
Exactly.
Okay. It's not, because I've mistakenly, like when I was first introduced to these, I mistakenly thought that the difference there was, okay, ground roll is going to be 860, and if you want to clear a 50-foot obstacle, you got to go 1,400 feet. But
nope. Yeah, it's 1470 from the time the wheels start rolling to the time you're at 50 feet.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of those things that's like so basic you're almost embarrassed to ask, but that's...
Not really. I mean, that's actually an upper level question, believe it or not, is how exactly this criteria is come up with. Because a lot of people will look at these numbers and just be like, oh yeah, well, it's 1570 to clear a 50-foot obstacle. Okay, well, where does the distance start? What are the conditions for starting that distance?
Mm-hmm.
What are the conditions of the aircraft? What are the conditions of the center of gravity? Things like that. All of those can make very small differences in training aircraft, but potentially very large differences in transport category.
Yeah.
So that's an upper level question to ask, definitely.
Cool.
So continuing through the charts here, you've got a maximum rate of climb speed, and you can see how the climb speed changes with altitude. So your VY speed for most of the climb is actually going to be 73.
Yeah.
It's 74 low altitude, but if you keep climbing, it's actually like 73.
Right.
Right. So stick with 73 or 72 and you'll be good.
This is something that the Piper charts, I think, really don't do well, is they don't take into account the progression of, or the degradation of performance with altitude. Like, in order to get that, you'd have to recalculate it, do those stupid charts every couple thousand feet.
Right. You got to dig into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't just, this is so much easier where you have a rate of climb
just going, eyeball it.
Yeah, or eyeball it, where you just have, it's just, here's the temperature that it is, and you can just look at the progression as you go. Like, they give you the altitudes versus you having to find the altitudes. I mean, you have to basically find everything, and, it's a mess.
What I think is interesting about these charts is that they're a little bit misleading, this rate of climb chart, because, you think you take off sea level at 20 degrees Celsius, right? Well, when you get to 10,000 feet, is it still going to be 20 C? No, it'll actually be 0 C if it's a standard lapse rate, right?
Yeah.
So you've got a kind of a bit of a curve that's not really depicted on this chart. You kind of have to mentally, intuitively figure out that, okay, yeah, there actually is a slight increase in performance if it's a standard atmosphere.
Yeah, and 20-degree increments is a lot, too.
Yeah, that's a very wide window.
Yeah, and especially here where we've got, like, inversion layers and crap where it's...
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, it's going to be like, you're not going to necessarily have that standard lapse rate.
Right. So it's things to think about with that chart.
Okay. Is a lot of this stuff from like a practical standpoint for like a private guy that's just, kind of flying all over the place, is a lot of this stuff like, know it exists, know the theory in, like, if you were sitting down talking about it, but it's not something that you're going to like need to pull that information while you're in the plane.
Nah, I don't think you'll ever get performance charts out when you're in the airplane.
Yeah.
If you're looking at Section 5 while you're in the airplane, there's either a diversion occurring or you have an examiner sitting next to you.
Yeah.
So this chart here, the time, fuel, distance to climb chart, this is going to be your best friend when you're doing cross-country planning in this airplane.
Yep.
This thing is awesome, but there are, again, conditions to it. You can see the notes down there at the bottom. This is the one that tells you that, hey, you need to add 1.4 gallons for engine start, taxi, and takeoff allowance. So that's your 8-pound difference between ramp weight and takeoff weight right there.
Yeah.
So that's where this is notated.
Cool.
Then the other note that people usually miss is note 3. Time, fuel, and distance increases by 10% for each 10 degrees above standard. Right. So if you're flying out here in the summer and it's a 90-degree day, you need to take those fuel and those times and increase them by 20%.
Okay.
So.
Cool.
Make sense?
Yeah. Now, what this is kind of, a deep question too. When I was doing these for my initial solo cross country, um, I would always hear conflicting reports about the use of like SkyVector and ForeFlight in creating your nav logs.
Sure.
And Tony was like, you will like, your DPEs will never let you use ForeFlight or never let you use SkyVector. And I've heard the exact opposite from people where it's like, if like have them written down, like, fill out your paper navlog and
Sure.
just have that there to show. But really, if you're able to explain where you got the numbers from ForeFlight, then that's all they really need to know. They don't care if it's kind of automated, the plus and minuses stuff. It's, where did this number come from? ForeFlight told me is a wrong answer.
That's a bad answer.
Yeah. Where did this number come from? Well, I put in the climb performance and, adjusting for the temperature, it does, this calculation, and this is the number comes up. That's like, okay, you understand where it's coming from, but you don't have to spend 4 hours every time you're trying to write a nav log.
Absolutely. No,
Okay.
I would 100% agree with that.
Okay.
I've had several students that are digital only. They don't own any paper nav logs, flight planning, logbook, anything like that. So
Yeah.
I am no stranger to digital only flight training. And,
Okay, cool.
I'm of the opinion.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked the paper. I had fun, doing, scrolling out the paper and with the plotter and doing all that stuff. Like, I think you gotta like at least once do that, because flying is a romantic thing to me, and that's kind of a connection back to that. But this is just insanely awesome to be able to do it on digitally.
Oh yeah, I mean, paper flight planning is archaic. There's a reason for it, and it exists still because it is still reliable, but it's archaic.
Yeah.
And there are better ways to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
So
Much better ways, and it's more accurate, and there's like less likely that there's going to be a mistake made. You've got, the one thing that I realized from the first navlog that I did to the later ones is, the ones that I did on ForeFlight, the intricacies of the en route weather that you can get from ForeFlight, and SkyVector too, for that matter, is way more accurate than going to, NOAA.gov and, trying to average stuff. It's like, I get that's what they did in the, 80s, but why not use the more accurate number and resource?
Absolutely. Yeah, if you can be more accurate, then be more accurate for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have no problem with you just using ForeFlight.
Okay.
That's fine by me. I know you know how to do it on paper. So
yeah.
And
yeah, did you watch that stream?
Yeah, I did.
You did.
Okay. Yeah, if an examiner wants to fight you on using ForeFlight only, I will gladly take that fight to the FISDO.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
So
it's how private pilots are now going to be flying every day when they go up for real.
Yeah. That's the modern world.
It's completely ridiculous to force somebody to do something that they're never going to do again.
Right. I would agree with that.
Let them demonstrate how they're going to actually be flying in the real world and see if they're doing it in a safe and proper way.
Right. Exactly. Why would you teach them something they're never going to use again?
Yeah.
At
the expense of confirming what they are going to use.
Oh, I'm losing you.
Oh, I was saying, like, at the expense of confirming that they're doing what they are going to use correctly.
I'm losing you there, Bill. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Let's we'll redo that real quick. Radio check. Stand by. We should have that little like elevator music. Technical difficulties. Let's I'm losing you here. Not sure if it's on under yours. We'll get him here. Call. Hello, everybody. We're going to be reconnecting with Brad here in a moment. And I actually do have a potential workaround. Radio check. Radio check. Let's try this out here. Yeah, my audio was going okay. But let's see if this will work here. We'll do this.
Oh, Bill, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
That was weird. Yeah, I just saw it come back all of a sudden.
Oh, nice. All right.
My internet's doing weird things.
Oh, it's all good. If there's a potential workaround by using the phone if we need to, but
yeah, I think it'll be okay. It just does weird shit sometimes.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Okay, so we were talking about the for-flight versus paper planning.
Yeah.
I'm cool with you just doing everything on for-flight.
Okay.
I know you know how to plan on paper, so
yeah.
I may ask you to, hey, can you show me how you got that number at some point? Just so you know.
Where'd you get that?
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's one of those things where, like, I'll hear you say something, and it'll be like, that doesn't sound quite right. And that's how that'll kind of develop.
Okay, cool.
So, cool. So the cruise performance charts are next after the time, fuel, distance to climb. The old cruise performance charts used to have the note on them that the cruise performance changes depending upon if you have wheel pants or not, wheel fairings or not. This particular 172 has main wheel pants, but it does not have a nose wheel pant. I don't think that there are performance figures for just the mains and not the nose, but I would assume that if you plan it as having no wheel fairings or no wheel pants, that it'd be okay.
Just error on the drag gear version.
On the slow side. Yep.
It must have had it. I mean, it did have at one point. I'm looking at the picture from Flight Radar, whatever the like jet thing, and it's got.
Maybe he took them off or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it's currently doesn't have a nose fairing.
Okay.
So, just food for thought.
Okay. Yeah, whoever took this picture, this jet photo shot of that plane, that's a really good shot of it.
Nice.
It looks really nice.
Awesome. So, anyway, yeah, that's my only thing about that. And you can see at the top there are conditions again. Cessna's really good about giving you the conditions that they use to come up with these charts. So that's the same thing for this. Recommended lean mixture, refer to section 4 for how that works.
So, okay, and we're going to be just like as a general area, I mean, we're going to be living pretty much around 4,000 to 6,000 feet anyway, but
I'm taking you to Big Bear at some point, so you can expect to cruise high on that point, just so you can see the whole high altitude envelope and everything like that.
Sweet, dude.
And we'll kind of demonstrate how the performance really degrades up that high. It'll be
Okay.
very, very interesting for you.
Are you up at 9.5 going out there?
I've done it as high as 11.7, and as low as 9,000, I think. But it kind of depends on weather. But 95 usually is pretty good as long as you fly the valley.
Okay, on the southwest corner.
Yeah, basically leading up from Redlands, there's a road and a valley that leads up into the edge of the lake.
Yeah, that's
the
the
big
route
thing
that I've
there is
taken in the
actually-
sim before, and like not
Yeah,
knowing.
it works really well because the terrain there at the highest point is like 6,700, so you can actually do it at 75 if you wanted to, but pattern
Yeah.
altitude's 8,000 anyway, so it's like, just go at 95.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing about flying that is that everybody flies that route, so you really have to look out for traffic.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
anyway, so you're going to be in the practice area. You're going to be hanging out between 60 and 70% horsepower. So, indicated airspeeds between 95 and 110 when we're in the practice area.
Yeah.
True airspeeds to match that as well.
Yeah, we'll be pretty close to standard tomorrow. So yeah,
Fairly
it'll be
close. Yeah.
2,400 RPMs, 23 to 2,400 RPMs will probably be where we're gonna be living.
Yep. For the most part.
Okay. Yep,
So.
that sounds good.
Cool.
And this is cruise performance too, and we're gonna be goofing around, so it's not gonna be.
Yes, there is going to be a substantial amount of fuckery. Yes. Cool. Questions there? Comments? Concerns?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Standard temperature high. I mean, the higher you go, the fuel burn really doesn't change too much, does it?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at percentage brake horsepower, it's almost identical.
Yeah.
Right? Because you need X amount of power or X amount of fuel to generate X amount of power or Y amount of power.
Right.
Right. So if you look at 65% brake horsepower at 12,000 feet versus 65% brake horsepower at 2,000 feet, you'll see the fuel burn is almost identical.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
So.
And what are they
that's a little
calculating?
bit
Because I mean, obviously, it doesn't have brakes in the
Right.
a driven brake. I mean, is that just a legacy term from automotive?
That I'm giving you a first homework assignment here. That definition is in the book somewhere. We talked about definitions earlier today,
Yeah.
or when we started this, as a hint of where to go look.
Okay.
So report back to me,
All right, we'll do.
and I'm sure you're doing that right now. Seriously.
I just hit the magnifying glass and typed in
Yep.
BHP. But yeah, I will.
So
look for
report back, but it's in there somewhere.
that. Okay.
Cool. And then the last chart we'll kind of touch on for tonight is this short field landing distance chart. It's 5-23/24.
Oh, not the range profile guy. Okay.
You-
These are the endurance profile are very close to Piper.
Yep.
I don't
Yep,
know about
and-
that.
Look at the conditions at the top. 53 gallons usable fuel.
Wow.
We take off with 35, right?
Yeah.
So is this thing useful?
Nope.
Nope, useless. Endurance profile is kind of important if you're flying full fuel. Range profile is completely useless because it's 0 and
Yeah. Okay.
so. Last one's the short field landing distance. You can see down at the bottom it has notes. Again, has 50-foot speed, up 61 knots. That's the only time you'll see that speed referenced outside of the big list at the beginning of section 4.
The 61 knots?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the beginning of section 4, remember in that list of speeds, there's one that says short field landing approach speed.
Yep.
That's that.
Right.
That is the only time that speed matters.
Okay.
It is just reference speed. That's all. So, The notes down at the bottom are important. You'll see that the distance modifiers for headwind versus tailwind are exactly the same as the takeoff distance modifiers. However, the ground roll with a grass runway is substantially more on a landing distance. See, it's 45% instead of 15%.
For operations on dry grass runway, increase distances by 45% of the ground roll figure. Now, why on earth would that be?
Because if you look in the procedure section for how you do a soft field landing, it specifies to use minimum braking. Right? So this is assuming it's going to be mostly an aero brake maneuver.
Right. Okay.
So that's how they come up with that.
Gotcha.
So this is a short field approach to a soft field rollout, basically, is that number.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense.
And then the other interesting thing here is that if landing with flaps up, increase the approach speed by 9 knots and allow for 35% longer distances. So what that tells us here is that given that this is our only landing distance chart, right? There is no short field landing at a lighter weight. There is no normal landing at any weight, right? It's just this chart. If we were to do a normal landing at 65 or 60 knots or whatever it is, it's going to be somewhere between this number on this chart and 35% more than this number.
Right.
Right? Because with flaps up and a higher approach speed, that's worst case scenario, right?
Yeah.
So if we're doing a normal landing with flaps down, it's going to be somewhere in that range.
Okay. So you're looking at, this 5, I guess call it 550 if you want to make a round number, 550 and 750 kind of.
Right.
7, maybe less than 750.
Yeah.
So about,
look at the highest number on this chart. If we go all the way to the bottom right.
Yeah.
Right?
Jesus.
The highest number on this chart is 1,700 feet.
Jeez.
And that's at 8,000 feet at 40 degrees C.
Yeah.
So somebody has lit the air around you on fire at 8,000 feet. And you still are less than 2,000 foot landing distance with an obstacle.
Yeah.
That's look at the difference between frickin' cold at sea level and, air on fire at 8,000 feet.
Yeah.
It's less than 500 foot difference.
It's not much.
Yeah. So is it that big of a deal for density altitude on landing? No. It's worth looking at, absolutely. But it's not that big of a deal. What is a big deal is tailwind. Say you have a 4-knot tailwind, right? You need to increase that distance by 20% for 4 knots. Right? So your 1,700 foot, warm day in hell number down there at 8,000 feet, your 1,700 foot number actually becomes a 2,100 foot number.
Now you're kind of quoting the total, the 50 foot obstacle one.
Yeah.
So on landing, how is that different than takeoff? So
what do you mean?
Like, would you look at that for takeoff performance? Would you immediately go to the 50 foot obstacle number?
Kind of depends on the situation. 50 foot obstacle is a safer number, right? Because if you don't have any obstacle, then it's kind of like, okay, whatever. I know I'm going to be airborne in whatever the ground roll is.
Okay.
But when are you looking at these charts? When you're going into an unfamiliar airport,
yeah.
Right? You go into somewhere like, let's use Ramona as an example. You go into Ramona, right? You've got like 4,000 feet of runway, so you don't really care. You go into Fallbrook, right? So Ramona's like 5,000 feet of runway. You don't give a shit, right? You're going to have enough runway. But look at Fallbrook up by Pendleton. It's L18. Fallbrook's a 2,100 foot runway. And if you look at the area surrounding Fallbrook, there's some cliffs on each end of it. Kind of an interesting airport. You wouldn't know that there's cliffs on each end of it or obstacles on each end of it unless you've been there, right? And if you're wanting to go to Fallbrook, you look at that airport, you see 2,100 feet. That should tell you immediately that, hey, we should probably look at the performance data, right? So that's when you want to side towards the more conservative, which is why I almost always use the 50-foot screen or 50-foot clearing height on these numbers when I'm kind of ballparking it.
Yeah.
Just so that, I'm using these charts if I don't know what the conditions are.
Yeah, because I did notice you, like just looking at those numbers where I'm looking at the ground roll foot. I'm like, well, okay, there's, I mean, I'm obviously also picturing largely 2-0 left. So,
sure.
I'm like, there's,
And I like to say that these charts are book or better for performance as well. You can very easily beat these numbers.
Yeah.
Like very, very easily.
Right.
And I will prove that to you tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can beat these numbers no problem. So these are worst case scenario numbers.
Right.
And it's okay. If you fly this profile, which is not a difficult profile to fly, you fly this profile at, the conditions prescribed, you'll get the book numbers. You manage to clear a 30-foot obstacle, or you come down final at 58 knots, you're going to be beating these numbers. You come down final at 2,300 pounds, you're going to be beating the numbers. So these are truly worst case scenarios.
Yeah. Okay. That's good, and that totally makes sense to me. And I, always try to use the more conservative numbers just in general and things, but
sure.
A lot of those nav logs, if your calculated fuel burn is 9, make it 10. It's like why use a number that's closer to the limit than you have to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, pilots suck at math, man. Like, why would we make the math harder than we need it to be?
Yeah.
I fly airplanes because I like looking out the window for a living. I don't fly airplanes because I like math.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm saying I need 1,500 feet of runway.
Yep, pretty much. You give me 1,500 feet anywhere except 8,000 feet in hell, and I'll be able to put that airplane on the ground. So.
Yeah.
Cool. Questions there?
No. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. That's about all I wanted to cover at the POH. Obviously, it was the most in-depth reading of the POH you'll ever have. But
it's super awesome, though, man. I mean, it's really cool. And it's one thing to go through it and read it, and it's another to go through and read it with someone that knows it like the back of their hand and kind of get into some of the
6 years flying this every day.
Yeah.
Or 5 years or however long I was flying 172s for.
Yeah.
So, Section 6, weight and balance. Section 7 is systems. We can kind of dig into those at another time, but for your own, perusing, you can take a look and see through how the difference or the numbers are a little bit different in this airplane versus the Piper as far as arms and weight and balance numbers and things like that. That only has to do with the reference point. Remember we talked about, it was the lower face of the firewall.
Right.
Whereas the reference point, the datum on the Piper was the spinner. So it's just a different reference point. That's all it is.
Okay.
So you can kind of peruse through that on your own. I know we've kind of taken up the entire 3 hours or however long it's been with the POH. So we'll kind of just really breeze through what we're going to do tomorrow, and I'll leave you to actually flying it if you want to, or going to bed or whatever.
Yeah, going to bed sounds great.
Yeah, I'm getting tired too. So do you have any questions about the POH before we move on?
I don't. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So as far as what we're going to be doing tomorrow, and I can send you this document if you want. Basically, the plan is going to be depart out of the west side, right? This will be new to you. depart out of ACI West, go to the practice area. It should be the same clearance. We'll go up to the El Toro practice area. Keep flight following while we're up there.
Yep. Okay. Which one? Sunrise drops it?
Yeah, Sunrise drops it. They go to 23.5. I'll monitor 23.5 just in case they're up flying. But I stay with SoCal. So
yeah.
Somewhere between probably 3,000 and 5,500 feet is where we'll be playing around tomorrow, kind of in that range.
Okay, that's pretty high. I think Tony had us like 25 to 35.
Yeah, I like to have more altitude to play with. So.
If it was up to me, I'd rather be higher too.
Yeah. I mean, these airplanes perform exactly the same at 25 versus 55. Yeah. So you can get up, give yourself a little bit more wiggle room.
Yeah, better view too.
Yep. So we'll get up, take off out of John Wayne. I know you're a big-time instrument guy. You like to look at those gauges, so you'll probably have a very, very short amount of time where you actually get to look at them. I'm likely to take away most of your gauges shortly after takeoff. I'm bringing a whole stack of Post-it notes with me, and I'm going to get aggressive with them.
Cool.
So yeah, departure to the practice area, climbing without the instruments, leveling off. We'll do incremental turns, start at 30 degrees, move to 40, 45, 50, 55 if you want. We'll go to 60. Just to kind of get you used to the airplane, get you used to how it handles.
60-degree turns.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just so you can see it.
Okay.
I don't want the first time you see something to be, the oh shit moment.
Right. Yeah.
So kind of incrementally increase the bank angle.
Cool.
Go there. Then we'll slow it down. We'll fly, power settings, 70 knots, 60 knots, 60 or 55 knots, 50 knots. Get it down as low as 50, clean. Then we'll start adding flaps, seeing what it does, right?
Okay.
Add flaps 10, what does that do to the stall speed? What does that do to the configuration, how it flies? Flaps 20, what does that do? Flaps 30, what does that do? Then we'll start adding power. Depending upon what the winds or loft are tomorrow, we could potentially get the airplane flying backwards. We could get it as slow as 5 knots, 10 knots ground speed. But I will show you exactly how slow you can fly this airplane.
Okay, make sure you're filming it for ACT memes.
Yeah, right. So I will show you exactly how slow you can fly this airplane. It is going to blow your mind and scare you at the same time. But I promise you,
that was one of the first. I wanted to do that. Like my second lesson after the first one was Fullerton and back. It was a quick one. I was like, I want to slow flat. I want to fly this stupid plane at as slow as it can go. So I'm not coming in at, final approach at 70.
Yeah. Well, usually I can get, depending upon what the temperature is and depending upon the altitude, usually I can get the airspeed to bottom out. Like usually you'll be seeing 0 knots.
Really?
Yeah, but we'll see what we can get. And that's just because the angle is so steep that you're shadowing the pitot tube. The indicated airspeed is actually like probably 30 or 35, but
okay.
Shadowing.
But the GPS ground speed is the.
It'll be probably in the 20 to 25 range if we're not going directly into the wind.
Yeah.
So, cool. So we'll do the drag demo, hang it on the prop. Then we'll let the nose come down a little bit, stall it with no power in the dirty configuration. Clean it up, recover, stall it without power clean, just so you can see how it stalls with that. Most instructors don't do that. I think that's kind of missing.
To stall it with no power clean?
Yep. Basically a power on stall configuration with no power. It's kind of weird. Most people don't do it. So just a reference point.
When I did that in the rep pack, it lost about 800 feet.
Yeah, no, the real airplane doesn't do that.
Okay, all right. I'm interested to see how that
real
feels in real life.
It's just a reference point. It'll be, it'll feel very similar to a dirty stall with no power.
I mean, you just got to just firewall it as quickly as possible, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, not even that. I'm just going to let you
put the nose down
out. Yeah, I'm just going to let you fly it out of the stall.
Cool.
So then we'll stall it clean with power, an aggressive one and a not so aggressive one, just so you can see the difference.
Yeah.
Then I'll let you just kind of fuck around with it for a little bit. You know, give it some bank, give it some pitch, kind of see how it responds. If you want me to walk you through some commercial maneuvers and things that can kind of demonstrate the capabilities of the airplane, things like that, I can do that for you.
Cool.
Probably do 1 or 2 abnormals, 1 non-memory item, and then I'll walk you through a memory item one.
Okay.
Hood work potentially on the way to French Valley or something like that. Just get you a little bit of simulated instrument time. Start knocking it out ever so slightly every now and then.
Is that kind of how you prefer to do it versus like, okay, hey, we're gonna go under the hood to wherever?
Yeah, for people who aren't so instrument inclined, I tend to do it. You know, we're gonna do 0.2 or 0.3 every now and then, just so you can get used to it. But,
Okay.
For you, because you have those secondary skills built already,
Mm-hmm.
I might just be like, all right, here's a 900-foot overcast day. Let's go to Montgomery or something like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, just to be able to experience that in the real world, you know, like filing a tech route, and I mean,
Oh, I'll throw you into the fire.
it's dope, dude.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. I had one kid in Illinois who I like to call the prodigy, because this kid was like the second coming of Bob Hoover. He was ready to solo by like 6 hours. And flight number 2 with him, like I had met him a day previous. Flight number 2, it was like a 1,200-foot overcast day. It was like 400-foot thick layers. So I was like, all right, we're just going to file IFR, blow through it, and cancel IFR up top, fly an approach back in, so we can get up and fly around for a bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have him flying on the instruments as a student pilot on Flight 2 out of Carbondale in this 172. And the kid just rocked it.
Nice.
And he had like no sim experience, so I would imagine that you would do just fine. Not to tell you that you can do that without me.
Oh yeah.
You know, just I would.
It doesn't. It honestly, it doesn't interest me to do that without. I mean,
that's good.
Yeah.
That's good, because that's a great way to get yourself killed.
Yeah, not interested in doing anything outside of the regulations.
Yeah.
Do you hear that, FAA? I have no interest.
Yep.
I look forward to that. I mean, I think, again, like I just keep saying, I am so fortunate to have you as my CFI, because some of that stuff, you know, like we can do, and, you know, you've seen me do it to some extent.
Sure. And I mean, there is a big grain of salt to be taken with sim performance, but it is an indicator.
Yes. No, that is a very good point, and that is something that I am excited to hopefully impress you with, like my actual flying ability versus, you know, what we do in the sim. As far as I'm concerned, that's like, you know, the landing rate plugins and, you know, landing performance and the actual flying of the airplane. I could honestly care less in the simulator. Right. It doesn't, you know, getting a -3 on a landing rate, like, that's fine. It doesn't mean anything. But you know, as long as I'm being realistic with my flight planning, my procedures, and my air traffic control communications, I consider that a good sim flight. But in the real plane, I fall back on those being fundamental skills that I have because of the sim, and now I don't think about that. If I say something screwed up on the radio, but like it's, you know, like the coming back from Camry on that solo flight, and I mentioned like, oh, that was kind of a mess of a read back, like that would bother me if I was on Pilot Edge. In the real plane, you know, it's like, oh, that was kind of a mess, but I wanted to be at the altitude. I want to fly this correctly. So it's like my priorities flip completely from one versus the other. In the real airplane, I want to be at the right altitude. I want to be at the right attitude, and, you know, make the correct calls. Whereas in the sim, it's like I want to make the right calls, but, you know, as long as I'm in the vicinity of where I would kind of need to be.
It's the school of good enough.
Yeah, I'm a big
fan of.
100%. Yeah.
I am 100% a big fan of the school of good enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're going to drive out to French Valley, putt our way along out there, either under the hood or not. Get into French Valley, and the first two things we're going to practice are normal landings and go-arounds. So we are going to do at least 2 go-arounds tomorrow.
Okay.
One of them is going to be planned. One of them is not going to be planned.
Okay.
You won't know when the unplanned one is coming. This is one of those surprises where it'll be like, hey, this looks great, go around.
Yeah.
Josh Gibbs hates me for that because the very first time I had him in the Bonanza and had him like all set up for a perfect landing, it was beautiful, like it was stable on profile. I was like, sweet man, looks awesome, go around. He was like, what?
Huh?
So I'll do the same thing to you at a slightly slower speed, obviously.
Okay. Yeah.
We'll do go-arounds, and at one point I'm going to demo a full flap go-around to you, just so you can see kind of what that looks like. We make such this big emphasis on get the flaps up to 20 immediately, then to 10, and then all that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Airplane's going to go around just fine at full flap, and I want to show that to you just so you're not terrified of it.
Okay.
Then we'll do probably an intro to short field, soft field, and no flap landings, just so you can see them. We're not going to hammer them out too much, but I want you to be exposed to them early so you can kind of see what it looks like. We'll do a forced landing.
Oh, I was just going to say with the short and soft field is, I did that whole lesson with Tony, but I think I'm excited to do that with you because I think you have a better way of explaining that.
I've done it a time or two.
Yeah, just from the explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was nothing against Tony. There were just a few things that, looking back at the footage there, after having watched it, I caught and like, oh, that's what he meant, and like, so there's some like extra clarity that I have after having done that. But the extremes, and I think what I'm excited for is that you've explained the extreme version of that so well that I can, like, the normal short field is going to seem like, are we going to, run out of runway
like,
here?
Why do I have so much energy?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So we'll do those for sure. We'll do a forced landing. You're a beam the numbers and the engine quit. Oh damn.
That's my favorite. That is my single favorite thing.
Yep. So we'll do those. Kind of give you a couple different ways to do it. A couple different thought processes behind it. Clean versus with flaps. At best glide versus higher than glide, slower than glide. Things like that.
Okay.
We'll kind of play around with it a little bit. And then I'll do probably 2 demo landings for you. I'll do a high alpha approach. So the make kilo approach, I'll show you kind of what that looks like in the real airplane.
Okay.
Probably not quite as slow as the real airplane or as the sim, just because, there are things like wind and gusts and other airplanes and birds in reality, all things that, you need to consider and potentially avoid. So it will be slow. It will be under 50 knots. It will be, stall horns screaming at you all the way down.
Yeah.
But I'll demo that to you just so you can see what the real thing looks like.
Okay.
And then I'll do what I like to call the high energy forced landing, which is a technique that a extremely experienced instructor taught me when I was in Illinois, which basically the theory is your midfield downwind and the engine quits, right? What's most people's first reaction? Okay, hold my altitude, pitch for 70 or 75 or whatever it is, pitch for best glide, whatever you want to do, conserve that energy and kind of just milk it around the pattern, right? His theory was the engine quits, throw it at the ground. Turn all of that potential energy into kinetic energy as fast as you possibly can, because then you can bleed that energy a lot easier and be a lot more accurate with where your landing point's going to be. So it's hard to explain without seeing it, but I'll show you it tomorrow.
Okay.
Just kind of as a demonstration of how parasite drag works and how conversion of potential energy to kinetic energy, as in from altitude to airspeed, can be done in a forced landing situation. But again, not something I would expect you to practice or show on a check ride or anything like that. Just kind of want to show you the capabilities of the airplane.
Yeah, which again
Also,
is really, really good for me to even just the sensation of feeling some of that stuff, because a lot of my kind of built-in hesitations are as a result of just not experiencing those sensations
sure.
and knowing that the plane can handle it fine.
Right.
You know, it's like those charts. You know, it's like those landing rate charts. Like I've been like the equivalent would be I've been staring at those numbers. So if I'm at 1,800 feet and I see 1,300 feet, I'm like, holy crap, this is not normal. This is a smaller number than that's published. It's like, yeah,
right.
it is, but it's fine.
There's a reason for that.
Yeah, it's totally fine. Don't worry about it. Quit. Shut up.
Yep. You know, burning day in hell at 8,000 feet.
Yeah,
so
burning day in hell at 8,000 feet.
Right. That's your worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So Leadville on the hottest day in recorded history. So the whole emphasis tomorrow for your landings is going to be stable approaches.
Okay.
You know, I am a firm believer that a good landing starts with a good approach. And if you screw up the approach, you can save the landing. But if you have a good approach, it's pretty difficult to screw up the landing. So I'm a firm believer that you started early. And a good landing starts on the down.
And airspeed is king.
Airspeed is king. I could really give a shit about anything else. Airspeed is king. So definitely that. Then we'll head back to John Wayne. We'll get creative about how we come home. Probably challenge you a little bit on getting there. Then come back into John Wayne. Dealer's choice for landing. Whatever you want to do, we can do that. We'll call it a day.
I love that. Okay. I won't prepare for getting back.
Whatever you want to do. You can prep for whatever you want. I 100% promise you I can challenge you if I need to.
I love that. Okay. I do have a question here.
Yes.
About the San Mateo Canyon Wilderness area.
Yes.
So when I did the flight on Wednesday up here, I basically was just north of that. I don't know. Do you have the stream open?
Yep, I do.
Okay. So I was just north of that where we're coming out. I mean, looking at it now, I mean, it's just basically Ortega.
Yep.
And just stayed clear of that. And it seemed like it was enough altitude at 5,500 feet, you know, like just scoot over, no problem. Yep. I have heard of people not really caring about the wilderness area and buzzing that thing. Obviously, regulation-wise, it's a recommendation to be 2,000 feet. It's not an actual regulation. What is your stance on that? How do you typically get over to French Valley? Do you worry about that at all?
I am going to challenge your question with another assignment. I want you to read in the AIM, it's 7-4-5 and 7-4-6.
Okay.
And I want you to take a look at those. And we can talk about it tomorrow. You'll find that when everybody quotes the wilderness area and, you know, wildlife refuge and everything like that, it's absolutely a valid consideration. It's something that you should definitely think about and plan around it. But the way that it's written is very specific that I want you to see. So
okay,
you can take a look at it. We'll come up with a decision tomorrow together.
Are we gonna be buzzing some cranes? Is that what's gonna
happen?
I
don't know, man.
Are we gonna be scaring some otters?
Yeah, I don't know. We can go deer hunting with a 172. Sure, let's do it.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so we'll take a look at it tomorrow.
Okay, cool.
And we can make a decision, an informed thought process behind it.
I love that instead of just arbitrarily buzzing the Ortega grade.
Exactly.
Because we like straight lines, right?
I like straight lines.
Try to plan for the straightest lines possible.
It's the shortest distance between any 2 points. I mean,
well defined, Bradley.
Yeah, thanks. My sixth grade geometry teacher would be so proud.
Oh my god, that's freaking awesome.
So, anyway, yeah. Questions, comments, concerns, things you're unclear about, anecdotes, funny stories.
I dig it all.
Anything like that.
Hey,
it's Mr. Gibbs.
I like all of it.
Senior Gibbs. Hello, sir.
Josh will be at Bracket around 11 tomorrow in the 836.
You should go hang out with Josh. I'm going to be in San Luis Obispo. Otherwise, I would.
I would too. I was there actually last weekend, and it was fantastic. What did I have there? It was the Polish sausages. They had a special, Josh, Polish sausages. But I will unfortunately be stuck in Orange County in the morning. But damn it, that would be fun.
Yeah. It's cash only, Josh, in case you didn't know.
It is cash only.
Yeah. If you're talking about norms.
They do have an ATM there in the restaurant though.
They do, at like $3 per transaction.
Yeah. The $103 hamburger.
Yeah, exactly. So cool. Comments, questions, anything like that from you or the viewers?
Yeah, so we'll depart. I mean, we'll probably get 2-0 left.
I can all but guarantee it.
Yeah. So we'll, I've done that with you 3 times. Yep. Leaving from the west side, so that'll be easy. We'll get 080 out of below 3,000.
Yep.
We'll head out to
124.1 squawk at a 02 something code.
Yeah. 1241, you said?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. 24.1 or 28.1.
Yeah. Yeah, 24.1 looks like it's the one out here. So we'll buzz around here. We'll do turns and stalls and all that stuff.
Yep. Stick around for a bit.
And then we'll head over to French Valley, and we will... How many landings? I mean, it doesn't have to be like a set number, but,
until we get bored.
Yeah, okay. And then we will make our way back to John Wayne. Yep. And there may or may not be some challenges involved with doing that.
I think that you can probably bet on that.
Okay. And then then we will just skipper into John Wayne, and that'll be good.
Yep.
Cool. Dude, I'm excited, man. This is gonna be awesome.
Should be a good time.
This is gonna be awesome. Yes, Fro. Yeah, this is the same man that's on Sky Vector. Yeah. Hang tag for the airport.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the best way to do that is going to be.
Okay. Because it's got to be. I mean, you have to be a plane owner or operator, right?
Yeah, I can probably try to get you one from ACI, but really the answer is I should go and get another one for the Bonanza. Let's play it by ear, especially because we're gonna have to kind of play the timing by ear too.
Yeah, I mean the tomorrow being, one being the first time, not a huge concern, but I was thinking about that earlier today. Like, yeah, it's at
if
some.
You can get through the gate.
Well, I can get through the gate fine.
Yeah, if you can do that, then I can park you in the hangar. That won't be a problem.
Okay.
But it's a question of getting through the gate.
Yeah, I can get through the gate. The lady even said, she's like, oh yeah, they like if you're gonna be there for more than a couple of hours just randomly parked, they don't like that. But she was like, if you're just going to be in and out pretty quickly and not leaving your car, you don't need a hang tag.
Yeah, I'm betting you'll fine.
So do you want me to do that tomorrow? Is just get inside?
Yeah, if you can, then do it.
Okay.
That's probably the best way to go.
Yeah. And the only thing I was thinking, just for a future, potential solo time where,
we'll have to cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
But I'll figure something out.
Okay.
So, because we can load passengers on the west side, and they don't have hang tags or driver's badges, so I'll have to figure out what the procedure is to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this first one, for sure won't be a big deal.
Learning curve.
Yep.
So
is the plane in a hangar? Is it kept in a hangar?
It is. Yes, it is kept hangared and secured. I'll have them pull it out probably by 1 o'clock tomorrow.
Okay.
And verify fuel. So I'm thinking, because I'm punching with Paul tomorrow at 10. Probably puts us in San Luis Obispo at like 11:30.
That's so
puts us
tempting.
out of slow at like 12:30.
That's gonna be such a freaking fun ass flight, dude.
Yeah, I'm thinking it'll probably be closer to 2 by the time we're good to go.
Does anyone have the plane after us?
I don't think so. I'll text Danielle and find out, but I don't think so.
Okay. Because I don't. It doesn't. I'm totally at your beck and call. So
okay.
If
say things bad.
Yeah, if it's, I mean, and you know how much I love a good golden hour.
Flight.
So.
All right. Well,
I
think it'll probably be closer to 2.
Okay, can you text me the N number to the jet, and I can, or like whatever. I mean, you can text me when you're leaving St. Louis, right?
Yeah. I'll text when I'm there.
And you're coming straight back from St. Louis, not going up to the Stratosphere?
No, we're gonna do that on the way up there.
Okay.
Because if we have any issues, we'll just come back to John.
Yeah. All right, and you're gonna be IFR, right? So you'll just scoot right through the Bravo.
Yep. A relative quote quick unquote hop up to 37.
Yeah.
And come back down. Even though it's gonna take us for fucking ever to get up there.
It's gonna be so cool.
It's gonna take us like probably close to 40 minutes to get up there.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like a reverse exponential curve, right? I mean, it's gonna get up to what, like 20s pretty quick, and then just start.
Yeah, it's gonna run out of steam about 25, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I think he's got almost full fuel in it right now. So.
And it's a 550, kind of like the one that you showed me.
501.
501.
Yeah, the baby jet.
Baby jet.
Yep. Weighs, to put it in perspective for you, the max takeoff weight for that airplane is less than the amount of fuel that the Sovereign carried.
Jeez.
Yeah. So
is that a 5-seater in the back?
He's got 2, 5, 7. He's got 7 in the back.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because he's got a double club, or not a double club, a 2-place rear-facing seat across from a 3-seat bench, and then a 2-seat bench across from the door.
Okay, that's cool.
So,
cool.
Yeah, his is interesting the way it's configured. It's the only 501 I've ever seen configured like that.
Yeah.
So, but he's a smart guy. He did that intentionally.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but there's no baggage space, which is interesting.
Yeah. Well, people can be enough baggage sometimes.
Yep. No room to store my emotional baggage.
Exactly.
So, cool. Other questions?
Anything else that I need to bring? I mean, I've got headset. I've got iPad clamp. I got camera. I've got the audio cord, of course. I got knee board. I'll have that. I've got charts. Got the logbook. Got normal flight bag stuff. There's nothing that I need.
Whatever you normally bring for a flight lesson.
Okay.
You don't still carry paper charts, right? You just carry ForeFlight?
No, I have the paper charts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that may get creative then.
Yeah. I used SkyVector for so long in the sim that having a static non-geo-referenced map is like piece of cake.
Yeah, I'm just over here scheming. That's all. Don't mind.
Dude, I welcome it.
Good. Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. on that note, I'm going to take a NyQuil and go the hell to sleep.
Dude, love it, man. Brad, thank you so much. This was unbelievable.
Yeah, anytime.
This is unbelievable.
It's now officially my job.
And yeah, we'll have to. I mean, we can talk about this offline too. But if there's a potential post-flight social calling that we can fit in.
Yeah, we can play that by ear, but I think the odds are high.
Cool, dig it.
So.
All right, dude.
Alrighty, senor. Hasta luego.
I'll have everything charged up and ready to go.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, man.
So,
peace.
Later.
Peace.
Yep.